Welcome to my channel, guys. If you're looking for an amazing novel, visit my Patreon page. Your support will help turn this story into an exciting audiobook. Join me on this journey. Chapter 61. The boy's golden eyes gazed quietly at them. The wind blew his cloak, making it flap noisily. An intangible aura gradually emanated from him. Ethereal, mysterious, otherworldly. Staring at the black-clad youth floating in the air, everyone was stunned. Floating? Flying? The soldiers' stern faces froze instantly. Henrik, the leader of the underground mutant organization, looked up, his eyes filled with astonishment as he gazed at the boy in the sky. Outside the encirclement, other mutants from the underground organization were also dumbfounded. What? He can fly too? Colonel Kage's mouth dropped open, the cigarette falling to the ground unnoticed, a testament to his shock. Was there a mistake in the intelligence? No one had mentioned that this guy could fly. In the distance, the gathered residents were so surprised their eyes almost popped out, their faces full of disbelief. What did they just see? A mutant boy walking step by step through the air from the 4th floor? And then hovering in place? Flying? Flying. This boy actually had the power of flight. Unbelievable. Inconceivable. Just as they thought it was over, an ethereal sound began to play, as if heralding his presence. Sacred, solemn, mysterious, otherworldly. What was that sound? What's happening? This is. Listening, everyone, from the regular soldiers to Colonel Kage, the underground mutants, and the distant residents, felt an overwhelming sense of tension and fear. The source of their anxiety was. Their gazes involuntarily turned towards the youth in the air, his black cloak fluttering. Gradually, they sensed a change in the boy's aura, his presence growing stronger. Like all things, yet godlike. He seemed to be the center of the world. At that moment, countless people were left in awe. He looked almost divine. How could a mutant be this terrifying? Everyone present was in disbelief, feeling suffocated by the oppressive atmosphere. Boom. The dark, stormy sky behind the boy, punctuated with flashes of lightning, added to their sense of suffocation. It was as if they were mere ants attempting to defy a god. In the face of this overwhelming pressure, their hearts raced with fear. Finally, Henrik bit his lip and snapped back to reality. Staring at the youth in the air, his black cloak blowing in the wind, Henrik gritted his teeth and shouted, "Stop pretending to be a god, kid. Do you think this will make us retreat? Impossible." With his shout, the stunned crowd quickly regained their senses. Yeah, why should we be afraid of just one mutant when we have so many people? Just a mutant. What's the big deal? He'll die under our firepower. A burly soldier's loud declaration quickly calmed the crowd, who felt he was right. Exactly. Why be afraid of a mere mutant? Nonsense. With 100 people surrounding him, could this boy really hold out? No matter how powerful he was, he would die under their firepower. Colonel Kage also realized this and said with satisfaction, "Attack." At his command, a dozen soldiers came forward, carrying long black launchers. At the front of each launcher was a small rocket launchers. Boom, boom, boom. White smoke filled the air as the rockets flew at 300 meters per second, practically invisible to the naked eye, streaking towards the boy. The next second. Boom, boom, boom. Fireballs erupted, and the heat waves swept across the area. Those close by had to raise their arms to shield themselves from the scorching heat. Seeing the fireballs engulf everything within a 10-meter radius, the distant residents covered their mouths in horror. Watching the blazing fire, they began to chatter. Horrible. That boy must be ashes by now. So tragic. At the center of the battlefield, Henrik looked surprised, taken aback by the rocket's power. Beside him, Colonel Kage, with a satisfied expression, explained, "These are anti-tank rockets. Even a tank would be destroyed by so many." So, Henrik looked disappointed and scoffed, "Is that all? This kid wasn't so impressive after all. I thought he was much strong." Just as Colonel Kage was feeling pleased and Henrik was showing disdain, and the onlookers thought the boy was dead, an unexpected scene unfolded. The fire dissipated, revealing the boy, unscathed. Not only was he unharmed, but his clothes were also intact. How is that possible? Is this guy even human? He doesn't have a steel body. How can he, with a flesh and blood body, withstand so many powerful rockets without a scratch? Not even his clothes. Countless people were stunned. Henrik's eyes showed astonishment, not understanding what had happened. Meanwhile, Colonel Kage, recalling something, showed a look of disbelief. The information was true? He can block attacks? Even. As he thought more, Colonel Kage gritted his teeth, believing the boy's ability had a limit. They just hadn't reached it yet. He regretted not bringing a nuclear rocket launcher. That would have definitely overwhelmed him. Not good. Suddenly realizing something, Colonel Kage's face changed, and he began to retreat quietly. Sure enough, soon after, with a shocked expression, he saw the boy still floating calmly in the air. But in front of him, flames suddenly appeared. The flames, as if propelled by some force, quickly crossed dozens of meters, heading straight for Colonel Kage and his men. Boom! Several soldiers were engulfed in the flames, screaming. Colonel Kage felt relieved. Good thing he had moved away. Then he looked at Henrik, who was also engulfed in flames. Is this guy dead? As the flames dissipated, the scene that unfolded once again stunned everyone. The leader of the underground mutant organization, Henrik, stood there with a sneer, unharmed, not even having moved. However, unlike the boy above, Henrik's body appeared translucent, like a phantom. Haha, the leader is invincible. The leader's power is still unmatched. End of chapter. Chapter 62. In the distance. The members of the underground mutant organization smiled. Their leader's ability to become intangible was still as strong as ever. No matter how powerful the attack, if it couldn't hit the leader, what was the point? Moreover, the leader could not only make himself intangible but could also turn people within a certain range intangible and quickly kill them. How could anyone defeat him? At this moment, the members of the underground mutant organization were filled with anticipation, expecting their leader to crush the boy like an ant effortlessly. The more extraordinary the boy seemed, the more their leader's reputation would grow after his death, and others would fear their leader even more. Henrik's unscathed appearance naturally shocked the surrounding crowd. How can they both be so strong? Is this guy also a mutant? Good thing we have him. At least we have a better chance of winning. As the crowd buzzed with discussions, Colonel Kage, knowing some insider information, showed a look of dread in his eyes. The power of nothingness. How terrifying. Glancing at the youth suspended in the sky and then at the sneering Henrik, he felt a bit of schadenfreude. Although the boy looked strong, he definitely wasn't as strong as Henrik. In a state of intangibility, the boy couldn't touch him and would still be attacked. What could he do? Even the so-called light that destroyed everything wouldn't work. If it couldn't hit, its power was meaningless. The next moment, he almost envisioned the boy turning intangible and then dying miserably. At this moment, everyone else was also eagerly awaiting the sight of the mutant fugitive dying at the hands of the black-clad man. Aren't you supposed to be strong, kid? Daring to offend my organization is seeking death. I'll grant you that now. Henrik sneered as he strode towards Syd. Syd frowned slightly. This guy could be immune to physical and energy attacks? He seemed almost invincible. He even suspected that even the black particles might not harm this guy. Before he could think further, he felt something was wrong. Run! Venom's voice was filled with terror. Syd saw his body becoming transparent as if about to vanish. Sensing the danger, Syd instinctively used a reduced version of Sunburst. Photon energy +1. Light burst from his body, making him look like a descending god against the dark clouds. At that moment, the intangible state on his body inexplicably faded under the power of Sunburst. Venom's terrified shout abruptly stopped, filled with disbelief. Not far away, Henrik, who had stopped with a sneer, had his smile freeze on his face. What did you do? He couldn't believe that the invincible intangibility had failed. No one can survive the state of nothingness, not even you. What are you? At this moment, he even forgot to call him a kid, his heart filled only with astonishment. In the distance, the dozen members of the underground mutant organization were shocked. Watching the boy shining brilliantly in the sky, they couldn't believe their eyes. Wasn't the boy supposed to turn into nothingness like a bubble and be crushed effortlessly by their leader? How could this happen? Had their leader's power failed? Impossible. Not only were they stunned, but Colonel Kage, who had been watching expectantly, also had his anticipation frozen. This light. Suddenly, he seemed to remember something, his face first filled with fear and then quickly relaxing. I'm at least 60 meters away from him now. His light shouldn't reach here. Recalling the information, he both relaxed and felt the boy's abilities were overrated. What light that destroys everything? It looks quite ordinary. Is this it? He looked suspiciously at the light emanating from the boy in the sky, thinking the intelligence provider had exaggerated. Even Syd was a bit surprised that the intangible state was dispelled by sunburst. He had been considering whether to try space transfer. Nothingness. Syd pondered. At that moment, he noticed the suspected commander giving the order to continue the attack. Suddenly, dozens of rocket launchers and numerous firearms aimed at him. Syd frowned. Unless he used space transfer, reflective shield might not withstand this barrage. Earlier, he had noticed that when he took so many rocket hits, several reflective shields were already showing signs of collapse, almost reaching their limit. If he tried to take it head-on, the reflective shield would shatter first, and his fragile body would be engulfed in the barrage, not even knowing how he died. After all, reflective shield was only at level 3. Being able to take so many rockets was already impressive. Level restrictions meant there was a limit to its defense. He quickly assessed the range of those attacking. Just then, rockets and bullets, and even missiles from helicopters in the air, were all aimed at him. From afar, the density was overwhelming, too many to count at once. This kind of firepower could plow through the streets several times. The surrounding people were once again filled with anticipation, thinking he would finally die under such a barrage. Watching the youth in the air, his black cloak billowing, shining with light, like all things yet like a god. Countless people admitted they were terrified. Why did such a freak exist? Such a mutant freak should die. Die, kid! Henrik snarled. Anyone who could resist his power of nothingness didn't deserve to live. As for being in the attack range himself, he wasn't worried at all. With his intangible state, no attack could harm him. Henrik was full of confidence. At this moment, countless eyes were filled with anticipation, almost seeing the boy's miserable death. However, a surprising scene unfolded. At around 11 in the morning, with the wind howling and the sky overcast, as the barrage of rockets and bullets launched, infinite light burst from Syd's body. Countless people saw the gloomy sky suddenly brighten. Everywhere else was dark, except for the blinding light centered around the boy within a few dozen meters. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Bullets and rockets flew through the air. End of chapter. Chapter 63. Under countless astonished gazes, the rockets were enveloped by the light before they even hit their target. Under the light of level 3 sunshine, the rockets' casings were disintegrated, causing them to explode prematurely. Boom, boom, boom. In an instant, fireworks erupted around the boy in the sky. As for the bullets, they were also disintegrated by the light of sunburst. The closer they got to Syd, the more the bullets disintegrated under the light. They turned into particles, then into nothingness. Before the bullets reached Syd, they had already vanished without a trace. This shocking scene left everyone frozen in place. The boy in the sky, like a god, was emitting light that destroyed everything. Majestic and overwhelming, it left everyone breathless. The ethereal music had become urgent, filling the atmosphere with tension and fear. Just as they thought it was over, the light had already enveloped them. By the time they realized it, it was too late. Ah! My body! Under the light, their clothes, guns, rocket launchers, and even their flesh began to disintegrate. Particles of dust filled the air. Then, these particles vanished into nothingness. This range? Impossible. Feeling his body start to disintegrate, Colonel Kage couldn't believe it. The information clearly stated the light's range was only 20 or 30 meters, but now it had reached over 60 meters. So this is the light that destroys everything? In his final moments, his eyes were fixed on the floating figure in the sky, emitting infinite light. Like a god, awe-inspiring. Can humans really defeat such a monster? In his last moments, his heart was filled with despair, anger, and unwillingness, realizing that this mutant was beyond his ability to kill. His earlier confidence had been sheer delusion. With a self-mocking smile, he turned to dust under the light. It wasn't just him. Within the range of the light, every soldier, Colonel Kage, and even the sneering Henrik faced the same fate. My power of nothingness. Henrik's eyes were vacant, his once confident, savage smile gone. He couldn't believe that his proud ability to resist any attack had failed under this strange light. I'm invincible. No, this is all an illusion. Henrik's face was filled with shock, despair, and unwillingness. He wanted to roar, to struggle, to activate his power of nothingness, but under the light, he could only delay the inevitable. No! Whoosh! As the wind blew, his body turned to dust, scattered in the wind. The light enveloped everything within dozens of meters. As it dimmed and everything calmed down, those outside the range were left in a daze. In their eyes, every soldier, Colonel Kage, and even the powerful-looking man in black, were all dead? The onlooking residents were almost scared to death, with some collapsing in terror. Monster, freak. Is this a god? Seeing the faintly glowing majestic boy in the sky, they no longer dared to look directly at him, instinctively lowering their heads, afraid of drawing the monster's attention. The leader is dead? Impossible. The leader's power. The members of the underground mutant organization were pale, filled with fear. Some muttered to themselves. Everything disappeared. Such power. Is he really a mutant? Their minds were blank, never having seen such a terrifying individual. While all the survivors were in disbelief, Syd was frowning. After using sunshine, his photon energy was once again depleted. If not for the minimal consumption of floating flight within a certain range, keeping him airborne, he might have fallen to the ground by now. Sunshine really can't be used recklessly. Feeling the exhaustion of photon energy in his body and looking at the dark clouds overhead, Syd shook his head. As he quickly scanned the surroundings, he noticed that after the sweep of sunshine, almost all enemies had disappeared. As for the remaining ones, noticing the scattered soldiers at the outskirts, his brow furrowed slightly. There were still some left. And those people? Noticing the dozen or so mutants, his brow furrowed further. Before he could devise a plan to deal with them, a panicked soldier accidentally fired a shot at him. The bullet spun toward Syd's chest at the speed of sound. Thankfully, Venom sensed the danger and covered his chest with a layer of black liquid. Bang! The bullet, as if hitting a non-Newtonian fluid, was stopped in its tracks by Venom. Syd's face changed slightly. Thank goodness Venom blocked it. Glancing at the soldier who fired, Syd's eyes scanned the restless mutants. Feeling a slight recovery in photon energy, he made a decision. In the next second, he flew at the speed of a running human to the soldier's head and used black particles. Black particles +1. Due to low energy, the level 3 black particles shrunk to level 1, quickly piercing the soldier's heart. Then, ignoring the fallen soldier, he flew away under everyone's gaze. Influenced by his aura and the previous terrifying scene, no one dared to stop him, allowing him to leave. In the eyes of the onlooking residents and the dozen mutants, the boy seemed to have grown tired of killing and didn't deem them worthy of his attention. Thank goodness, that freak finally left. So terrifying, when he looked at me, I thought I was going to die. Me too. They were filled with relief and fear of Syd. The more they recalled the recent terrifying scene, the more fearful they became, trembling all over. In the mutant organization team. Let's go back. The woman in the red dress gritted her teeth. The leader is dead. We need to go back and discuss our next move with the others. The other members nodded silently. As they left, the remaining soldiers and onlookers exchanged glances. Eventually, they too left. Although they left, the impact of the battle was quickly spreading. End of chapter. Chapter 64. Time quickly passed, and soon 2 hours had gone by. The news of the recent battle gradually spread out. At the Brotherhood of Mutants headquarters, Magneto, Eric Lencher, was sitting in a chair, with a few of his subordinates around him. At this moment, Eric frowned. He wondered how that child was doing. Thinking about it, he felt a bit regretful. 100 armed soldiers might not be much for him, but for a teenager, it was an almost insurmountable challenge. And it wasn't just the armed forces. If it weren't for that guy named Henrik, Eric wouldn't be so concerned. With Henrik involved, it seemed nearly impossible for the boy to escape. More likely, he might already be dead by now. He had been thinking that it wouldn't be long before he heard news of the boy's death. Just as he was feeling regretful, Mystique, a blue-skinned mutant, rushed in. Before he could ask, Raven said with shock in her voice, "Eric, you won't believe what I found out." Magneto looked at her in surprise, wondering why she was so agitated. "Raven, what's wrong?" "That kid didn't die," Mystique said urgently. "Didn't die?" Magneto was initially puzzled, but he quickly realized who she was talking about, and his eyes widened in surprise. "He escaped? How did he get away?" Not only was Eric surprised, but his subordinates also looked shocked. How did the boy manage to escape? Was he that lucky? "No, he didn't escape." Mystique shook her head, delivering a statement that stunned them. "That kid killed almost everyone, including Henrik." "What? Raven, what did you say?" "He killed almost everyone, including Henrik?" "Did we hear that right?" Both Eric and his subordinates were in disbelief, questioning what they had just heard. Raven was saying that the boy had killed over 100 well-armed soldiers, and also the seemingly formidable underground organization leader, Henrik? "Are you sure you didn't say it wrong? That was a character comparable to the Black King, Sebastian Shaw, and he died so easily?" Not only Magneto but his subordinates also couldn't believe it. Mystique softly explained, "This incident has had a huge impact. I confirmed it several times. They are indeed all dead." Hearing this, Magneto and the others were left in shock and astonishment. How did they die? Mystique hesitated for a moment, then briefly described what had happened. When they heard that the boy not only could fly but also used light to destroy those people, they were both shocked and puzzled. The subordinates glanced at Magneto. Among them, only Magneto could fly. But that boy could not only fly but also used light to kill almost everyone? Light again? What exactly is that? Last time, they had heard that the boy used light to kill many people. Most of them didn't take it seriously, at most feeling curious. Now, hearing that he used light again and killed nearly 100 soldiers, including the powerful Henrik, even the most dismissive people now felt a heavy sense of importance and curiosity. What exactly was that light, and how could it be so terrifying? They couldn't help but want to see that light for themselves. While they were deep in thought, Magneto finally calmed down after a long period of shock. After calming down, he was still amazed by the power of the light. What kind of mutant ability could have such a powerful effect? Level 4? Suddenly, a thought popped into Magneto's mind. Could it be that the Omega-level mutant Charles mentioned is this boy? He couldn't help but think that way. Not long ago, Charles had suddenly discovered an unknown Omega-level mutant, and now there was this outstanding boy. There could be a connection between the two. Thinking this, he shook his head, feeling that his assumption was a bit rash. If the boy were truly an Omega-level mutant, he wouldn't have been pursued so miserably. Based on his current display of power, it didn't seem to reach the catastrophic level that Charles described. Magneto chuckled to himself, thinking he was overthinking. Not every strong mutant could be an Omega-level mutant. If that were the case, Omega-level mutants wouldn't be so rare and nearly non-existent. They were the ultimate existence among mutants, the ultimate threat to humanity. Of course, even if the boy wasn't an Omega-level mutant, he was certainly a level 4 mutant and worth paying attention to. Magneto's eyes gleamed as he instructed Mystique to intensify the search for the boy. While the Brotherhood of Mutants received this news, the X-Men were not far behind, quickly learning the outcome of the battle. All dead. Scott was shocked. Jean, Aurora, and Scott exchanged glances, all unable to hide the shock in their eyes. They had been wondering how the boy could escape from the hands of over 100 armed soldiers and Henrik. Surviving was the best they had hoped for, but now, they were being told that the soldiers, who even they found challenging, were all dead? And they were killed by the boy they thought might die? At this moment, they couldn't help but be astounded. Light again? While they were in amazement, at the 23rd base, the atmosphere was incredibly heavy. All dead. Alexandro's face was dark as he stared at the warden, Marco. Marco nodded, trembling. Alexandro clutched his chest, nearly collapsing. So many people dead? The kid he initially thought was insignificant, who he believed could be dealt with at some cost, had repeatedly defied his expectations, now more than ever. After listening to Marco's detailed account, Alexandro couldn't believe it. That kid really is unbeatable, with no limits, able to surpass his limits again and again? Alexandro gritted his teeth. I don't believe it. He must have limits. At this moment, Marco hesitated, then took out a laptop and played a video. Sir, this video might be useful to you. Alexandro was puzzled but instinctively watched. The video showed Syd releasing light. End of chapter. Chapter 65. Just watching the video made Alessandro shiver, feeling a deep pressure. But as he watched, his eyes suddenly lit up. This is... In the footage, the light did not cover all areas. Scattered soldiers, onlookers, and even those mutants were not covered. What does this mean? Alessandro felt excited. He believed that if the boy could do it, he would definitely kill everyone, especially those mutants. But he didn't. The light remained fixed within a certain range, not covering them. The meaning was clear. The boy had limits, and it was already apparent. Perhaps previous times it might have been a disguise, but this time it was definitely not. Especially the next scene in the video further confirmed his thoughts. The boy was floating in the air and almost got shot by a soldier's gun. If it weren't for the black liquid that appeared to help block it, he would definitely have been shot. Afterward, his act of killing the soldier seemed like a bluff. If the soldiers had fired more shots or if those mutants had acted, the boy would definitely be dead. Good, good, good. Alessandro's smile returned. The boy wasn't invincible after all. He was human, with human limits. With this video, he had basically figured out the boy's real limits. However, this time, 100 soldiers died, along with the loss of so many resources. Even the congressman behind him couldn't cover for him now. Not to mention, he wanted to continue sending people to deal with the boy. But Alessandro's eyes deepened. Allowing Irina to broadcast the show was definitely the right move. Under public pressure and his own reputation, the government had no choice but to continue sending troops and resources. Does that boy think he's up against me? No, he's up against all of America. Alessandro laughed lightly. A mere mutant wants to stand against the mighty United States? Not to mention the numerous armed soldiers, even things like tactical nuclear missiles could teach that boy a lesson. He's courting death. Alessandro smiled, already envisioning the boy's ultimate fate. The end was either capture or death, with no third possibility. Of course, even though the government would act, his own situation wouldn't be great either. Heh, I'll have to offer them some benefits, Alessandro sneered. Suddenly, an idea struck him, and his eyes lit up. That boy. He focused on Marco and asked, "Did you find any of the boy's body tissue?" "Sir, are you going to?" Marco understood immediately. Use that Kevin's cells for experiments? As a base known for experiments, what else could it be? Yes, Alessandro nodded, smiling. The boy is so powerful. His body must be special. If we obtain his tissues, we can certainly study something useful. And that boy has severe cancer. The fact that he's still alive suggests his body is unique. If we discover something, that boy won't be able to escape. He will become our lab's test subject. Marco's eyes brightened with anticipation for that scene. Alessandro's smile widened. The Sentinel robots were almost fully developed. Soon. He couldn't wait to see the boy either captured or dead in the near future. While Alessandro planned at the 23rd base, Irina was troubled. Why does this always happen to me? Dressed in blue, Irina's tone was full of complaints. The government had failed again. How could she explain this to the viewers? Should she tell the truth? Irina feared that angry viewers might burn her house down. Fortunately, her boss called her shortly after, instructing her to cover up the incident as best as possible. 2.5 hours later, Wolverine and his group, searching for shelter from the rain, paused and looked at the large screen in the square. The screen showed a familiar woman, Irina. Wearing blue shorts and a shirt, she stood on stage with a smile. Good afternoon, viewers. I'm your old friend, Irina. Today, I bring you unfortunate news. Due to sudden events, the authorities have temporarily cancelled the operation to capture the mutant fugitive. They will resume once they are better prepared. Hearing her words, not only were Wolverine and his group stunned, but the viewers, who were eagerly awaiting the capture of the mutant Kevin, were also stunned and furious. Damn you, Irina. You trash host. You're the worst I've ever seen. Deceiving us? As the viewers fumed, Irina quickly explained, please don't misunderstand. The operation hasn't been cancelled, just postponed. To ensure success, the authorities have requested more weapons and manpower, which takes time to organize. So, the preparation will take longer. So, don't worry. The operation will resume soon and will not fail. Hearing this, American viewers began to believe her. At the same time, they became even more excited about the upcoming operation. With such thorough preparation, the mutant boy would surely be captured. Their interest was reignited, eagerly anticipating the next, more prepared operation. On the street, Wolverine and his group exchanged worried and puzzled glances. Worried about the more severe capture operation, and puzzled by a vague sense of something being off. Let's investigate, Otto suggested. The others nodded in agreement. As they took action, the government was also busy covering up traces and preventing news leaks. Thunder roared. The sky was dark with heavy rain pouring down. In this weather, how long will it take to collect energy points? Syd shook his head. After leaving the battlefield, he had planned to continue collecting energy points today and then proceed with the unlocking progress to see what would happen next. End of chapter. Chapter 66. Venom emerged from Syd's right hand. Syd, you're incredibly powerful. Venom's voice was tinged with excitement. I knew it. Together we're invincible. No one can stand against us. He felt incredibly fortunate to have bonded with such a powerful host. As for his previous host, Venom sneered, thinking that poor guy was probably still fleeing from that man. How unfortunate, heh. Syd glanced at Venom, his mouth twitching slightly. You're too cocky. You haven't met the truly strong ones yet. Syd, you keep talking about strong people, but where are they? I haven't seen anyone stronger than you. Venom didn't believe him, thinking Syd was being modest. Syd shook his head, conversing with Venom while seeking shelter from the rain. Time passed. The cold, torrential rain poured down until noon the next day. The sun gradually emerged from behind the clouds, casting brilliant sunlight that brought forth a rainbow. As the warm sunlight shone on him, Syd's energy points steadily increased. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Unlock progress. 90%. Casually adding the remaining energy points, Syd found the unlock progress unchanged and shook his head. The next second, he turned and left the area to avoid being found again. Soon, the sun set, and darkness enveloped the sky. Syd's energy points increased once more. Energy points. 6,101. After a quick glance, Syd decided to accumulate more before adding them. While he was continuously collecting energy points and evading some secret trackers, a large mass of strange red energy was quickly approaching Earth in the dark, silent space. At NASA, an employee staring at the monitor exclaimed into his headset, "Everyone, attention." The satellite detected something unusual. Hearing his voice, the roaming staff and those handling data turned their gaze toward him. Several people gathered behind him, looking at the anomaly on the screen. On the radar display, a large, strange object was rapidly approaching Earth. In space, the energy mass glowed red, resembling solar wind or a nebula. As the satellite camera shifted, a clearer view of the strange red energy emerged, causing the staff to exclaim in surprise. What is that? Is it a solar flare? The detected heat value is off the charts. Oh my God! The staff were shocked and anxious to report the matter. Unfortunately, before they could act, the red energy mass was already near Earth's atmosphere, heading straight in one direction. The fierce wind howled, scattering countless clouds. Soon, the massive energy mass approached America, hesitated slightly as if sensing something, but ultimately continued toward its initial target. The dazzling red light shone in the night sky, causing countless onlookers to cry out in surprise. "Oh my god, what is that? A newly developed energy weapon? It looks like it's coming our way, run." The bystanders were terrified, thinking it was an energy weapon attack, and fled in panic. The red energy didn't target them, otherwise, they wouldn't have escaped and would have been reduced to ashes in an instant. 2 kilometers away, on a high-rise rooftop, Syd watched the red energy mass with a tense expression. What a terrifying thing. What is that? Venom was so scared that his teeth almost fell out, his mouth wide open. Syd was equally alarmed, sensing a strong threat from the red energy. That direction is... He looked over. 2 kilometers away. Cyclops, Jean, and Aurora were searching for someone, their eyes fixed on the sky. "Run. It looks like it's coming our way," Cyclops urged. He grabbed Jean and started running, with Storm close behind. However, no matter how they ran, they couldn't escape. The red energy mass seemed determined to follow them. "You too go," Jean suddenly said, pulling her hand from Cyclops' grip. Seeing their shocked expressions, Jean hesitated for a moment and said, "I can feel it. Its target is me." "Jean, no you." Cyclops began to refuse without thinking. Before he could finish, the dazzling red energy mass approached, radiating intense heat. Jean didn't hesitate, using her telekinesis to push Cyclops and Storm away. Just as she pushed them 100 meters away, the red energy mass arrived. "Jean!" Cyclops and Storm shouted. Jean raised her hands in defense, her telekinesis surging forward to block the red energy. The fierce wind howled, and the sound of burning filled the air. The red energy was momentarily blocked, but it was too powerful. Despite Jean's strong telekinesis, she couldn't hold on. Jean screamed and was engulfed by the red energy. "Jean!" Cyclops and Storm, hiding behind a building and shielding themselves from the energy's shockwave, were filled with sorrow. Jean was dead? Their grief was short-lived as they witnessed an astonishing sight. The massive red energy mass suddenly contracted inward. It seemed as if something was absorbing it, and within moments, it vanished. Jean floated in the air, tendrils of red energy flowing into her. During the process, parts of her clothing and flesh seemed to be destroyed and then restored, a strange sight. In the final moments, the red energy formed wings in the air, resembling a reborn phoenix. The next second, all the energy was absorbed into Jean's body. Jean slowly descended to the ground. "Jean!" Seeing her safe, Cyclops and Storm rushed over. "Jean, wake up, are you okay?" Scott called out to her. After a moment, Jean slowly opened her eyes, felt herself, and said in confusion, "I'm fine. What happened to me?" As Scott explained, Jean frowned. End of chapter. Chapter 67. "We need to get back and have Professor Xavier check you," said Storm. The 3 of them hurried away. 2 kilometers away, Syd, observing the now vanished red phoenix, murmured to himself under Venom's puzzled gaze. "The Phoenix Force, huh?" Originally, Syd might not have known what it was, considering the numerous red energies in Marvel. But if it took the shape of a phoenix, it could only be one thing. The Phoenix Force, one of Marvel's 3 ancient forces. In Marvel lore, it's often compared to chaos magic. Syd frowned, thinking, strange. Didn't Jean Grey already have the Phoenix Force? What's this then? He began to ponder. Soon, he figured it out. In X-Men, Dark Phoenix, the Phoenix Force did indeed appear in space and was attracted to Jean, choosing to bond with her. As for why Jean already had traces of the Phoenix Force, Syd had a theory. The Phoenix Force was never whole. It existed in fragments. This could be another fragment, or a fragment that had long been linked to Jean. It flew from deep space to better merge with her. For a cosmic abstract entity, representing the mind and life, achieving this wasn't difficult. As for why the Phoenix Force chose Jean, it made perfect sense. Syd pondered. The Phoenix Force favored those with strong mental powers. Despite Jean's seemingly average performance in the X-Men, her mental strength was among the top in humanity. Even Professor X couldn't compare. Jean surpassed him in mental strength. However, unlike Professor X, Jean couldn't control her powers as effortlessly, often losing control. Eventually, Professor X used his psychic abilities to restrain her. According to the storyline, as the Phoenix Force within her awakened, she lost control again, turning into the Dark Phoenix. Thinking of the Dark Phoenix, Syd's expression turned grim. Transformed into the Dark Phoenix, or with her second personality awakened, Jean's mental power skyrocketed. Even Professor X couldn't escape death in the storyline. Now that the Phoenix Force has suddenly arrived, is she going to turn dark? Syd pondered, forced to consider his chances if he had to face the Dark Phoenix. Compared to Jean's gentle main personality, the Dark Phoenix was almost insane. Who knew what she might do if she suddenly attacked? After calculating, Syd shook his head, feeling unsure of his chances. I need to get stronger during this time and hope the Dark Phoenix won't turn dark so quickly or cause trouble. Besides this, Syd felt the timeline was a bit chaotic. The Dark Phoenix should be part of the Days of Future Past timeline reset, the Apocalypse line, where mutants weren't in such a bad situation. Forget it, Marvel's always a mess, especially with my influence. Syd shook his head, stopping his thoughts. He floated in the air, practicing his floating flight skills and absorbing photon energy. Floating flight experience +1. Photon energy +1. While Syd was busy developing his abilities, Cyclops and the others returned to the X-Mansion, where they were examining Jean's condition. After some tests, they found nothing wrong with Jean except for her energy levels being off the charts. Jean, how do you feel? Asked Professor X from his wheelchair. I don't know how to describe it. It feels unprecedented, like everything is activated. I feel great. Cyclops and the others sighed in relief, but Professor X's expression turned grim as he thought of something. Jean, let me check, Professor X said, placing his hand on Jean's head and closing his eyes to use his psychic abilities. But as soon as his mind entered Jean's, her expression changed slightly, and she snarled, "Get out of my mind." With that, an invisible telekinetic force pushed Professor X away. With a thud, he and his wheelchair fell to the ground, and the surrounding objects were also scattered by the telekinetic wave. Jean! Professor! Beast, Cyclops, and the others exclaimed. Professor X propped himself up, saying, "I'm fine." Then he looked at Jean. Under their gazes, the now normal Jean panicked. "I don't know what happened." While the X-Men were in chaos, 3 white light clusters floated in the dark night sky. Looking closely, 3 alien spaceships could be seen within the halos. Boom, boom, boom. The 3 ships quickly crashed into the river. Woof, woof, woof. At a house party, a golden retriever suddenly started barking outside. "I'll go check on Luna," said a beautiful woman in a white dress with platinum blonde hair. Her companions laughed and joked. "Go ahead. Remember to stop her barking." Margaret smiled apologetically and headed outside. In the dim woods, Margaret soon found the barking Luna. "Luna, what's wrong? Calm down. Good girl, stop barking." She tried to soothe Luna, but the dog kept barking at something ahead. Margaret, puzzled, cautiously walked in that direction. After a few steps, she was startled and hurriedly retreated. Emerging from the darkness were several gray humanoid creatures with withered skin, resembling mummies. A scream echoed, then the woods fell silent again. The gray humanoids gradually transformed into the woman named Margaret and headed to the party. Behind her were more gray aliens. Soon, the party fell silent, and all the gray aliens disguised themselves as humans. If Syd were here, he would recognize them immediately. They were the Darbari, residents of the planet Darbari. The Phoenix Force had inadvertently destroyed their planet while heading to Earth. Unwilling to accept this, the survivors sought the Phoenix Force, following its trail to Earth. End of chapter. Chapter 68. Time flew by, and 5 days passed quickly. During these 5 days, Jean's condition became increasingly unstable due to her second personality, causing headaches for Professor X and the others. Eventually, they let their guard down for a moment, and Jean ran away from the X-Mansion, her whereabouts unknown. At night, while the X-Men were searching for Jean, the Darbari aliens gathered together. The Darbari disguised as Margaret slowly got out of a black car and walked towards a tall, black man dressed in black. Beside the tall black man was a group of people, all Darbari as well. Is this all that's left of the Darbari Empire? Margaret scanned the area, looking at her disguised companions. As she approached, the tall black man addressed her by her real name. "Hello, Vuk. Have you mastered the language of the Earthlings?" "A piece of cake," Margaret replied nonchalantly. She asked, "What have you discovered?" The black man thought for a moment and said, "That power is contained within one of them." "An Earthling?" Margaret was surprised, finding it hard to believe that such a power would choose a weak human. The black man explained, "She's quite powerful. She's a mutant." Hearing this, Margaret became thoughtful. She had noticed that there were so-called mutants on this planet, but none seemed very strong, at least not compared to her. The black man continued, saying that the human wasn't aware of the power within her. Margaret's mood brightened. "I can use that. If we can control this power, we can revive our people, rebuild our civilization, and..." She glanced around, whispering, "Rule here." Margaret asked, "Where is she?" "Inside a bar." Jean sat on a chair, drinking. To others, she appeared as an old man because she had twisted their minds with her psychic powers. At that moment, a platinum blonde woman walked into the bar, slowly approaching Jean. Sitting on the chair next to Jean, Margaret said softly, "Hello, Jean." Jean stopped drinking and looked at her, instinctively trying to use her psychic powers. Margaret calmly said, "You can't control my mind. I'm not like them." She ordered a drink from the bartender. "How did you find me?" Jean asked. "I have connections in the government." "Who are you?" Margaret turned to her. "You should be asking, who are you? Are you the frightened little girl who follows that man in the wheelchair? Or the most unique and powerful being on this planet?" She gazed admiringly at Jean. "Are you afraid of your power? Do you fear it will breed evil? That it will make you lose control?" She smiled. "Maybe that's your true nature. Stop suppressing yourself, Jean. You've been taught to be obedient, but those teachings are from ancient times, created by men with limited minds. They can't understand someone as powerful as you. Neither can your X-Men teammates." Jean was taken aback. An hour later, Jean followed Margaret to a luxurious residence. As soon as they entered, Jean saw 4 people waiting inside, seemingly unafraid of her. "Do they know who I am? They're not afraid of me?" Jean asked. Margaret laughed, saying as she walked upstairs, "You're the only one here who fears your powers." Jean followed Margaret upstairs. Once they were up, the tall black man said in a deep voice, "Gather the others. If she can't control it, we'll destroy her." Margaret led Jean into a room. Looking at the ordinary room, Jean asked, "Why did you bring me here?" "To show you something." Margaret raised her hand, and the surroundings quickly transformed into the beautiful scenery of the cosmic sky. Margaret explained slowly, "Do you remember what happened not long ago? The power that entered you is a special force, and it wasn't by accident. It was attracted to you." "What is it?" Jean was confused. "A pure cosmic energy." She turned to the glowing red energy, saying, "We saw this power enter you. We were following it and saw it happen, Jean." "Why were you looking for it?" Margaret sighed, "Because it's the spark of life in the universe. This flame destroyed our planet. We've been chasing it, trying to control it, but everywhere it goes, it brings destruction, until..." In the projected scene, the red energy appeared and quickly destroyed a beautiful planet, which was the Darbari homeworld. Margaret paused, then looked at Jean. "Until it found you." "Why?" Jean was still confused about why the energy sought her. Margaret stared at her seriously. "Because you don't know how strong you are. You are the most unique being on this planet. You are exceptionally gifted, unparalleled, Jean," she said, her voice full of admiration. The projection faded, and the room returned to normal. Margaret continued, "No one on this planet can compare to you, and in the face of the unknown, they fear you. When they fear something, they try to destroy it?" Jean finished her sentence. While Jean and Margaret talked, far away, Wolverine and others were gathering information. "That Irina from a few days ago was suspicious," Otto said. Chris, Wolverine, and the others nodded. They were shocked by what they had learned. According to their information, Syd not only survived but also wiped out hundreds of soldiers and a powerful mutant. "That kid is a monster, right?" Wolverine and the others found it hard to believe. They couldn't imagine what kind of power it took to achieve such a feat. Is he really a mutant? So powerful? While they were in shock, others also received the news. The information spread quickly on the internet, causing a sensation. Hundreds of soldiers attacked, and they all died? How was that possible? Are you kidding? Is that mutant kid even human? By the next morning, the news was everywhere, even on television. In a luxurious living room, the tall black man was watching TV and saw the news. Who is he? Margaret, passing by with Jean, glanced at the TV and asked. End of this chapter. Chapter 69. Jean and Margaret, along with the other Darbari, all stared at the television. On the screen, a middle-aged female news anchor was passionately accusing the government of deceiving them and covering up a failure. According to reliable sources, the government sent over 100 soldiers, each armed with heavy weapons, including numerous rocket launchers. However, our findings indicate that this operation was a complete failure. Over 100 soldiers couldn't defeat a single mutant child. We have reason to suspect that the department in charge is either incompetent or didn't take this seriously. Viewers everywhere were shocked. 100 soldiers armed with heavy weapons couldn't take down one mutant? They were both shocked and skeptical, questioning the credibility of this report. Anyone with a bit of rationality found it hard to believe such an outrageous rumor. So many soldiers with heavy weaponry failed, and they expect us to believe it? Who would believe that? Most people didn't think a mutant kid could pull off such a feat. He wasn't Superman, after all. How could he take down so many people? Some even speculated that the government staged the whole thing. On Irina's live broadcast website, a flood of questioning comments appeared. Irina, what's going on? You said the government was making more preparations, but the operation failed. Is this true? Tell us. Come out and explain. Faced with these questions, Irina was at her wit's end, unsure how to handle the situation. Fortunately, her boss issued an order, and she immediately released a statement. The government will launch a new operation in the next day or two. Please trust that the mutant boy will not escape. A day or two. Seeing her message, the viewers calmed down a bit, choosing to wait and see. In the luxurious living room, Margaret listened to the news anchor, her face showing surprise. Are there mutants this powerful among you? The other Darbari nodded in agreement, equally astonished. An alien species managing such a feat? Even they wouldn't necessarily survive such an assault without danger to their lives. So how did a mutant manage it? Jean, watching the news, said, I know him. All eyes turned to her. Jean explained, he's very powerful and has great potential. We, the X-Men, were looking for him, hoping to recruit him. Margaret smiled and said, we shouldn't believe just one side of the story. The mutant boy you speak of might not have done all this. Jean, you don't need to worry about him. Compared to him, you are the strongest and most unique. I've always said you're exceptionally gifted, Jean. They can't compare to you, Margaret smiled. The Darbari around them echoed her words in agreement. Margaret is right. You are the most special one. While Margaret and Jean were talking, Wolverine, Chris, and the others arrived at the X-Mansion, hoping to enlist Professor X's help for Syd. Logan, why are you back? Storm asked, surprised, at the Academy's entrance. She glanced at Chris and the others, a hint of caution in her eyes. Logan quickly explained why they had come. To their surprise, after hearing Logan's explanation, Storm shook her head and said, we're looking for that kid too, but we haven't found him yet. He's hard to track. She paused, sighing. And right now, we're also dealing with Jean's issues. We're a bit overwhelmed. Hearing that Jean was in trouble, Wolverine was taken aback and quickly asked Jean? What's wrong with Jean? We suspect she has developed a second personality, a very violent one, Storm explained, recounting the events and Jean's disappearance. As Storm explained, Logan and the others exchanged worried glances. In the end, they decided to stay at the X-Mansion to see if they could help. While Wolverine and the others were busy, cheers echoed from a heavily guarded research facility. Dr. Bolivar, we've succeeded. Haha. A dozen researchers in white coats were excitedly standing before a robot. It was tall and slender, entirely black, with skin composed of small scales, resembling fish scales, giving it a dark and frightening appearance. Next to the short-statured Dr. Bolivar, The base commander of Base 23, Alessandro, marveled at the masterpiece before him. He asked in awe, Dr. Bolivar, did it really succeed? What abilities does it have? How did you develop it? The dwarf-like Dr. Bolivar turned to him and explained with a smile, it's thanks to the mutant Mystique from the Brotherhood. We studied and cracked her shape-shifting gene and enhanced it, integrating it into the Sentinel robot. Now it can not only shape-shift at will but also copy mutant abilities. Copied abilities are uploaded to a database for all Sentinel robots to use. Against different mutants, it will use the countering ability. Finally, Dr. Bolivar smiled with a hint of pride. To any mutant, it's their nemesis. Hearing this, Alessandro was shocked. So unique? These Sentinel robots were monsters. Imagining the scenes in his mind, Alessandro felt a chill down his spine. How could mutants win against these Sentinels? Even powerful mutants might manage to defeat a few Sentinels. But what about a group of them? Sentinel robots could be mass-produced quickly, with a constant supply. Mutants, on the other hand, not only needed the X gene to awaken but also needed time to master their abilities. At that moment, Alessandro seemed to see the future extinction of mutants. Suddenly, he smiled and asked, Dr. Bolivar, what do you think of mutants? Do you hate them? Otherwise, why develop Sentinel robots? Dr. Bolivar, while observing the Sentinel, said, no, on the contrary, I admire them. I believe mutants are our saviors, capable of uniting humanity against a common enemy. He paused and then said solemnly, and our first common enemy is that teenage mutant. His existence threatens public safety and must be eliminated. Hearing this, Alessandro smiled in agreement. It seemed the boy's death was inevitable. Facing a group of Sentinels that could copy abilities, he stood no chance. End of this chapter. Chapter 70. Sentinel robots are not like soldiers. They don't feel pain, fear, and they possess abilities, essentially making them equivalent to a group of mutants attacking together. Recently, the government decided to continue targeting that kid. With the Sentinel robots, his chances of survival are slim. Once that kid is eliminated, it will be time to wipe out all mutants. No mutant will escape. Alessandro smiled. Dr. Bolivar Trask sighed. It's thanks to that mutant. Without the pressure he put on the senators, the Sentinel robot plan wouldn't have succeeded so quickly. Alessandro nodded, then asked, Dr. Trask, when can the Sentinel robots be deployed? Trask thought for a moment and answered, the production line is almost ready, and we have plenty of materials. It won't take long. That's good. Alessandro's smile widened. Although the production line was nearly ready, there was a shortage of mutant gene data, which would lead to the Sentinels having limited abilities initially and a higher attrition rate. To address this, Trask designed small robots to approach mutants and collect their genetic information. These small robots also carried the Sentinel's targeting system. With the targeting system, no mutant within 10 kilometers could hide. With it, the Sentinel robot's mutant data would greatly improve. Furthermore, the X gene data from various labs would significantly enhance the Sentinel robots. Trask was confident that no mutant could escape the Sentinel's pursuit. This elimination race between mutants and humans was about to end with the mutants' defeat. First, they needed to eliminate that young mutant, securing the first victory. In a good mood, Dr. Trask turned to handle production line matters. While the X-Men and Jean Grey were dealing with their issues and the government prepared to take action, Syd Castell was feeling the changes in himself. A notification sounded. Floating flight experience +1. The next second, the notification continued. Ability. Floating flight, 0/2000, level 4. Finally, level 4. Feeling the surge of photon energy within him, Syd breathed a sigh of relief. Floating flight should have leveled up faster, but the noise it caused and the people searching for him slowed the process considerably. However, reaching level 4 in just a few days was still impressive. As sunlight shone on him, his photon energy increased rapidly. After replenishing his energy, Syd estimated his current capacity. His photon energy had increased from being able to use level 3 abilities 70 times to over 100 times. A significant boost. Now, he could use his abilities more freely, provided he wasn't under heavy attack. If too many enemies surrounded him, even he would struggle. Besides the increased photon energy, Syd noticed a substantial increase in his remaining lifespan, now up to 140 days. Syd relaxed slightly and focused on his floating flight ability. After leveling up, he found his constant flight altitude had increased to 500 meters, and his speed. Whoosh! Syd's figure moved rapidly in the air, leaving after images. Testing it out, he found his flight speed had reached a point where the human eye could only see after images, which was quite impressive. Not bad, Syd evaluated internally. At that moment, Venom's small head emerged from his right hand. Syd, why do I feel like you're getting stronger? Is this my imagination? Venom was confused. It seemed like every period, Syd got stronger. Feeling puzzled, he asked, "Is it my imagination?" "Probably," Syd replied casually. Putting floating flight aside, Syd focused on his energy points. After several days of gathering, his energy points had skyrocketed, nearing 6 digits. Energy points. 65,326. That should be enough to reach 100% unlock progress, right? Wonder what will happen? Syd had a strong sense that the change would be significant. Unable to hold back any longer, he immediately invested all his energy points into the unlock progress. The 90% unlock progress blurred. Unlock progress. 99%. Syd frowned. Apart from the 9% increase in progress, he felt no other changes. So 9% unlock progress amounted to nothing? Syd felt speechless, thinking, it seems the imitation is really of the game's Orochi. Sigh. If it were the lore Orochi, the abilities wouldn't be so limited. However, he sensed that reaching 100% would bring a qualitative change, though he wasn't sure what it would be. This feeling was as strong as when he sensed Scarlet Witch or Sunshine. He was certain it was accurate. I'll know when the time comes. At that moment, Syd felt both disappointed and hopeful, wishing for his energy points to soar so he could reach the final 1%. It wouldn't take long, he sensed. The remaining 1% wouldn't require too many energy points. Time flew by, and 3 days later in the morning, in a luxurious villa. Jean, where are you going? Margaret asked, puzzled, as Jean was about to leave. The remaining Darbari also looked at Jean. Jean glanced at them and hesitated. I feel something drawing me somewhere. I'm going to check it out. Attraction? What could it be? The Darbari exchanged puzzled looks. Since Jean insisted, they didn't stop her. After a brief discussion, they decided to accompany her. As Jean and the Darbari moved, the X-Men had also tracked Jean's location and were heading there. Due to Jean's immense power, not only Professor X but also Magneto Eric had agreed to join at Professor X's request. While the X-Men were on the move, the internet was buzzing. It had been more than a few days since Irina mentioned the government's new action, yet there was no progress. Irina, where are you? Explain. Is the government capturing the mutant or not? Is this another scam? Faced with the viewer's anger, Irina was panicked. Luckily, good news came just in time to relieve her. Near noon, Irina started a live broadcast. Irina, how dare you show your face? You're a liar. Despite the insults, Irina didn't panic. She awkwardly smiled and said, Dear viewers, rest assured, the government took a bit longer to prepare, but the operation has now begun. End of this chapter. Chapter 71. The viewers momentarily stopped their insults, their spirits lifting. At that moment, they heard another piece of good news from Irina. To make up for the previous delay, this time, the capture operation will be broadcasted live nationwide. Everyone can see the entire capture process. Of course, Irina didn't mention that this live broadcast was the government's attempt to restore its lost credibility, reassert its authority before the public, and demonstrate its power as a warning to some. This led to the live broadcast capture. The viewers didn't know or care about this. Hearing her announcement, they immediately stopped their complaints. Really? Where? Start it now. Hurry up. Knowing the audience's eagerness, Irina didn't make them wait long. She quickly switched to the live feed. At the same time, several American TV stations also began broadcasting the live footage in real time. On the grassy field of a stadium, countless viewers saw nearly 100 black, unknown humanoid figures standing in rows, creating an eerie sight. What are these? Robots. Oh my god. In the shocked eyes of hundreds of thousands of viewers, the black humanoid figures took off, flying uniformly in one direction. The viewer's perspective followed them, keeping steady behind the flying black humanoid figures. Meanwhile, Irina's voiceover began. Hello, viewers. Let me introduce these black figures. They are actually robots, the government's secret Sentinel robots. They are the ultimate weapon against mutants but harmless to humans, so there's no need to worry. Now, they are heading to find our target. With them, the mutant boy won't escape. You can be assured of that. Listening to Irina, the viewers were not immediately convinced, remaining skeptical. Can these black lumps really capture that boy? Don't let this be another failed operation. It was as if the broadcast knew their thoughts. They soon witnessed the power of the Sentinel robots. One of the black Sentinels seemed to detect something and flew downwards. The live camera zoomed in, and the viewers saw the black Sentinel flying towards a bearded man in the middle of a robbery. Shit, what are you? Omar, in his 30s, looked shocked. Before he could react, the black figure punched him. Under the gaze of hundreds of thousands of viewers, Omar's body turned to rock. Boom! He punched the Sentinel, which caught his fist with its right hand. The next second, a shocking scene unfolded. As the Sentinel caught his fist, its body transformed, becoming rocky like Omar's. In Omar's stunned state, the Sentinel robot exerted force with its right hand, not only copying his ability but also overpowering him, pinning him down. Then, the Sentinel knocked him out with a punch. It placed a mutant inhibitor on him, a device that suppressed his powers, preventing him from using any abilities, similar to a pulse disruptor. Ignoring the unconscious Omar, the Sentinel reverted to black and flew away. Irina's cheerful voice echoed in the surprised viewers' ears. As you can see, these Sentinel robots can copy mutants' abilities. With them, mutants are no longer a threat. Her words left the hundreds of thousands of viewers in shock. Copy abilities? So strong, these are Sentinel robots? After the initial shock, some viewers started feeling schadenfreude. The mutant boy won't escape now. Knowing the Sentinel's abilities, there was no longer any doubt. With these robots, the mutant boy had no chance. In full view, the Sentinels rapidly approached their target. In a remote suburban area. Floating flight experience +1. Photon energy +1. Syd was gathering photon energy when Venom warned him. Syd, run. I sense danger approaching. Venom's small head emerged, his expression grave. Syd frowned, looking towards the distant sky. He saw a swarm of black dots rapidly approaching. As they got closer, Syd recognized them, his expression changing drastically. We can't escape. Syd sighed, responding to Venom. He knew the Sentinel's capabilities, aware that they could detect mutants within a certain range. Even if he used spatial transfer to a hidden place, they would likely find him without issue. The black Sentinels flew closer, surrounding him. Nearly 100 Sentinels floated in the air, staring coldly at him. Ha, he's doomed. God bless him. Just watching this is scary. Seeing the black-clad boy surrounded, the viewers felt a mix of pity and excitement. In the eyes of countless spectators, Syd slowly floated up, facing the surrounding Sentinels. Sentinel robots, huh? Syd's voice echoed around, startling Alessandro and Dr. Bolivar, who were secretly monitoring. How does he know? The viewers were also confused. These black Sentinels were just released. How did this mutant recognize them so early? Ignoring their confusion, Syd's aura rose, accompanied by a strange melody. Glancing at the encirclement, Syd flew upwards. The Sentinels' heads opened, and nearly 100 massive laser beams shot towards him, as if predicting his flight path. Boom, boom, boom. The sound of lasers cutting through the air echoed. Rebound shield experience +1. Syd quickly created a rebound shield in front of him. Fortunately, he had flown in one direction. Otherwise, he would face lasers from all sides, and one shield wouldn't suffice, consuming more energy. Syd, dodge. Venom urgently warned. Using his flight speed, Syd dodged from his original position. The next second, he witnessed an astonishing scene. The previously unbreakable rebound shield was scattered by the Sentinels' combined laser beams. If he hadn't dodged, he would have been vaporized. Suddenly, Syd felt the void around him filled with stored laser energy. Testing it, he realized he could release it. He raised his hand. "Take this." Boom. End of chapter. Chapter 72. A massive beam of red energy shot out, instantly striking a Sentinel robot. The next second, the Sentinel was blasted away, and its body began to shimmer with a diamond-like sheen, attempting to transform and withstand the attack. Unfortunately, facing the concentrated beams of countless lasers, this was beyond its limit. Most of its body was destroyed. With a thud, it crashed to the ground and didn't move for a long time. The viewers were shocked. His flight speed is so fast, and he can reflect energy? The Sentinel robot was destroyed just like that? At this moment, the boy seemed almost inhuman to them, as if he were one with the world around him, with everything in harmony. Accompanied by that strange melody, countless viewers became tense. Fortunately, the following scene made them breathe a sigh of relief. The Sentinels, realizing they couldn't attack in unison, changed tactics and began attacking Syd Castell with lasers one by one. Red beams of light streaked through the sky, and Syd dodged continuously. If not for his enhanced flight speed, he might have been hit already. Of course, if this continued, it was only a matter of time before he was struck. Seeing him dodging left and right, the viewers felt a bit pleased. No matter how strong you are, you can't beat so many Sentinels. What's the big deal about taking down 1 or 2 Sentinels? Let's see you take down a whole bunch. The viewers were excited, as were Dr. Bolivar Trask and Base Commander Alessandro, who were secretly watching. Seeing the Sentinels gaining the upper hand, they felt a surge of hope. The first battle against mutants was going well. Victory was near? Dark Particle Experience +1. A dark particle appeared in Syd's hand and shot like a bullet towards a Sentinel robot 18 meters away. Despite the Sentinel's quick reaction and its transformation into diamond, it couldn't withstand the dark particle's attack. With a piercing sound, a large black hole appeared in the Sentinel's chest, flickering with internal fire. Another one down? Can't absorb and analyze this ability? Dr. Trask watched the Sentinel robot with a surprised expression. While Alessandro and the others were secretly shocked, Syd frowned. There were too many Sentinels. Even if he took down 2, there were still over 90 left. Even if they stood still, he might not be able to take them all out. Unless he used sunshine. But using sunshine would consume almost all his photon energy. If more Sentinels appeared, he wouldn't know how to deal with them. Syd was sure the government had probably planned for this. So, he hesitated, unsure whether to use sunshine. While Syd was battling the Sentinels, the X-Men found the missing Jean Grey. In the scorching midday sun, Jean, Margaret, and the others were heading towards the Sense location when they saw Professor Charles Xavier, Eric, Logan, Chris, and others blocking their way. Jean's expression was complicated. "Jean, come back with us," Professor X said, moving his wheelchair forward and extending his right hand, his expression pleading. Margaret stepped forward, chuckling. She's not a child anymore. She can go wherever she wants. No. Professor X started to say something, then stopped, confused. Who are you? He found he couldn't penetrate the woman's mind with his psychic powers, as if she were wearing a psychic blocking helmet like Eric. So he was puzzled. Jean? Logan stepped forward, wanting to say something. Jean looked at them calmly. I feel fine now. I don't need to go back. Logan tried to move forward, but a powerful telekinetic force wrapped around him and sent him flying. With a thud, he landed far away, dust rising. Logan! Storm's hands crackled with electricity, and she shot a bolt of lightning at Jean, hoping to stun her. Boom! The white lightning streaked through the air. Jean, dressed in red, with her red hair flowing and her eyes turning black, had energy patterns appearing on her face. She raised her hand quickly, deflecting the lightning bolt. The bolt struck the ground far away. What? Storm and the others were shocked. Eric waved his hand, and a silver chain flew from a corner, aiming to bind Jean. In an unexpected turn, Jean just glanced at the chain, and it froze in midair, unable to move. Eric frowned, exerting his power. But no matter how much he tried, the chain didn't budge. "Your magnetism can't affect me," Jean said, her red hair flowing and her eyes pitch black, her face filled with joy. Her laughter echoed around them. "This feeling is great." As she laughed, buildings around them began to rise from the ground, creating a terrifying scene. Boom, boom, boom. With a wave of her hand, the silver chain flew away. For a moment, Logan and the others were stunned. Jean seemed invincible and terrifying. Not only could Professor X's psychic powers not penetrate her mind, but Eric's magnetism was no match for her telekinesis. She easily lifted over a dozen buildings. And they believed this wasn't even Jean's limit. Professor X knew this well. Even as a child, Jean's telekinesis could lift all the cars in a town, let alone now. Meanwhile, Margaret continued to incite her. "Jean, I've always said you are gifted. They can't match or understand you. You are the most special being on this planet. Facing the unknown, they fear you and will try to control you. Don't believe them. Follow your heart. Do what you want." Margaret slowly enticed. "Jean, don't believe her," Professor X tried to say something. Seeing this, Eric took a different approach. He looked at Jean, surrounded by dark energy, and said seriously, "Do you remember our first meeting? Do you know what I saw in you?" End of chapter. Chapter 73. Eric's mind flashed back to a surprising scene from his childhood when he went to pick up Jean. Everything in the small town was floating. Jean's gaze shifted to him, and so did everyone else's. Magneto. Eric continued with a smile, "I saw the next stage of revolution, the dream Charles and I have always yearned for." He glanced at Charles and sighed, "I don't understand why Charles would turn a goddess like you into a mere mortal. I can control metal, but you can do anything you want." Jean stared at him. "I think you're no different from Charles." Eric shook his head. "No, I'm different. He wants to suppress your abilities, but I don't. With me, you can be yourself. As nature intended," he said softly. "You have such immense power. You were born to lead us mutants against humanity." "Eric, you..." Professor X couldn't hold back. Eric snapped, "Shut up, Charles. Your outdated thinking no longer fits the present." "Jean?" Scott also tried to say something, attempting to bring her back. Logan, standing beside Chris and the others, watched the scene of buildings flying around and sighed. If only Syd were here, maybe he could help. Otto shook his head. "Logan, don't joke. Even if Syd were here, he could only hold out for a while against Jean. It wouldn't make much difference." Logan was stunned and then looked at Jean's outburst, subconsciously agreeing. Indeed, with Jean in this state, no one could stop her, not even Syd. At that moment, an unexpected scene unfolded. From a distance, there was a sound of something breaking through the air. A black figure with a group of strange black humanoid creatures flew in. Dark Phoenix. Jean's presence had created such a commotion that it attracted Syd Castell's attention. Thinking it might change things, he flew over to check it out. Under the black hood, Syd's expression was one of surprise. He didn't expect to see such a massive scene upon arrival. Professor X, Magneto, Wolverine? Has Dark Phoenix gone rogue? While he was astonished, the viewers watching the broadcast, including those from abroad, were equally shocked. What were they seeing? A dozen buildings were floating in the air? Oh my god, is this the power of mutants? Terrifying. Holy crap. Good, get rid of these mutants too. The Sentinel robots should be able to handle them, right? As the viewers discussed, Syd continued to fly, dodging the thick lasers, astonishing Logan and the others below. Syd's familiar outfit immediately made everyone recognize him, including the Darbari. It's him. Margaret was surprised. She had just seen him on TV that morning and evaluated the boy. Now, he was right in front of her. And from his performance, he was quite capable. She shook her head, thinking that compared to Jean, this boy was still ordinary. Only the unique Jean deserved her attention. The other Darbari had similar thoughts. Not far away. Is that the boy? Professor X was stunned. He was amazed that the boy could still handle himself under such an onslaught of Sentinels. Magneto. Eric, surprised, had been searching for this boy for a while, and now he appeared right before him. If it weren't for the urgent situation and Jean's presence, he would have liked to talk to the boy. At this moment, "Syd!" Logan shouted. "What are these things?" Dodging while explaining, Syd said, "They are Sentinel robots, developed by the government to combat mutants. Be careful. These Sentinels can copy mutant abilities." Logan and the others were instantly shocked. Copy mutant abilities? Not joking? Can they copy any ability? Syd flew down. A Sentinel robot flew towards Dark Phoenix Jean Grey. Under the watchful eyes of hundreds of thousands of viewers and a large number of foreign onlookers, Jean raised her hand and immobilized the Sentinel robot. Then, an astonishing scene occurred. Energy surged from Jean, and the Sentinel, which had switched to a steel form, turned to ash in an instant. Not a drop of water splashed. This. Hundreds of thousands of viewers were shocked. Each one of them, is this crazy? This woman. She's even crazier than that mutant boy. At this moment, they began to doubt whether the Sentinel robots could truly combat mutants. Each one seemed stronger than the last. Not only were the viewers shocked, but Dr. Bolivar Trask was equally stunned. How can this woman disintegrate a Sentinel robot? Sentinel robots in that steel state were nearly indestructible. The hardness at that moment was only slightly weaker than adamantium. How could this woman do that? Dr. Trask was both shocked and puzzled. And then, another surprise hit him. The woman's abilities couldn't be absorbed, analyzed, or copied by the Sentinels. What was going on? On the battlefield. Jean raised her hand, her telekinetic shield effortlessly blocking the laser beams, and then used her abilities to disintegrate one Sentinel robot after another. Facing her disintegration ability, the Sentinels couldn't absorb, analyze, or copy it, as if encountering a bug. At this moment, Eric shifted his focus from the boy in the sky. Compared to Jean, he couldn't be bothered with this level 4 mutant kid. The most important thing now was Jean. Seeing her terrifying power, Eric shouted, "This is your power, Jean. Come to my side. With this power, we can create a nation for mutants. You were sent by the heavens to save us mutants." At this moment, Dark Phoenix Jean didn't look at him. After taking down 3 more Sentinels, she turned her gaze to Syd on the ground. "They always thought highly of you, but I don't." She smirked, revealing an evil, cruel smile. The next second, an invisible force lifted Syd into the air. Dark Phoenix Jean, her red dress and red hair floating, stared at the boy with her black eyes. "Jean, stop!" Professor X shouted in shock. "No!" Storm cried out. "Kid! Jean, don't!" Wolverine Logan shouted in panic. Eric, startled, subconsciously shouted, "Wait!" Chris and the others were equally anxious and terrified. They seemed to see Syd turning to ash like the Sentinel robots. The Darbari smiled. "Yes, this is what you should do. Kill him like an ant," Margaret said softly. At this moment, not only were they tense, but the hundreds of thousands of viewers watching were also shocked, feeling a mix of pity and schadenfreude. The boy was done for. Base Commander Alessandro and Dr. Trask felt regret, thinking it a pity they couldn't personally take down the boy. Syd wanted to use spatial transfer, but found his spatial abilities blocked. In a short time, his body showed signs of disintegration. Feeling the life-threatening danger, Syd's mind became chaotic, and energy surged within him. He lost control. Infinite energy erupted from him. Boom, boom, boom. A hurricane roared, blowing away countless buildings. Energy surged everywhere. Countless people were stunned. End of chapter. Chapter 74. What's happening to him? What's going on? The hurricane whipped around them. Everyone struggled to keep their eyes open, shielding their faces with their hands as they stared in disbelief at the boy enveloped in energy. What kind of power is this? Energy points. 0. Unlock progress 99%, 100%. Terrifying platinum energy erupted from Syd, spreading outwards in a sweeping wave. A Sentinel robot in its steel form was instantly blown away, disintegrating into powder inch by inch. Impossible. How could a Sentinel robot be destroyed so easily? Dr. Trask couldn't believe his eyes. This was in its steel form. Second only to adamantium. That woman could do it, and now this boy too, without even moving. How could they so easily destroy a Sentinel robot? What kind of abilities do they have? Why are they so terrifying? Before they could recover from their shock, a horrifying scene unfolded. In the terrified eyes of Magneto, Professor X, and hundreds of thousands of viewers, street lamps, the ground, and the buildings Jean had levitated with her telekinesis quickly disintegrated into particles under Syd's energy. The terrifying power swept through everything, as if it was going to destroy the world. Viewers were terrified. What was happening to everyone? Were mutants all this crazy? Now, this boy seemed even more terrifying than that woman. He was a monster. In the distance, Eric, Professor X, and the others were filled with dread, feeling their hearts race with fear. Boom! A terrifying aura burst from Syd, forming a hurricane that blew in all directions. Is this a loss of control? Professor X Charles murmured in shock. He felt the shadow of death looming over him. Charles wanted to struggle, but could only watch as the destructive energy surged towards him. At that moment, the telekinetic force Jean had applied was broken. Dark Phoenix Jean tried to use her telekinesis to stop Syd, but it was a struggle. What was happening to him? Facing the overwhelming energy and sensing the danger, her body glowed with fiery red light. Boom! The two energies collided, obliterating everything around them. This power. Dark Phoenix Jean's face showed a trace of pain. She couldn't believe it. In the distance, Eric and the others, who were trying to escape, were shocked to see Jean seemingly being overpowered. How was this possible? Before they could think further, sensing the danger, the deeper layers of the Phoenix force within Jean awakened. Fiery red energy surged from Jean, forming fiery wings on her back. With a scream, the Phoenix force erupted. Boom! Platinum and fiery red energies intertwined and clashed in the air. The overwhelming energy spread, and under the cover of platinum and fiery red forces, everything in its path disintegrated inch by inch. Buildings, cars, streets. Gray dust filled the sky. Boom! The two clashed continuously, creating long swathes of destruction. Then, like black holes colliding, they spun and flew into the sky. Infinite platinum and red light intertwined and clashed in the air. In an instant, the entire city was covered in light, the sky turning into a mix of platinum and fiery red. Everyone watching the ongoing battle in the sky, destroying buildings, was left stunned. The Darbari stared up with their mouths open. These are Earth's primitive species? How was this possible? Jean, at least, had the Phoenix Force, but this boy? With his mutant ability? Margaret was stunned, unable to believe it. She had thought only Jean was special and worthy of their attention on this planet. But now, a boy had appeared who could stand toe-to-toe with Jean? Could rival Jean? Margaret found it hard to believe. In the distance, Eric was shocked, thinking, they're like gods. Jean was expected, but the boy, the mutant child he had been searching for, turned out to be this terrifying? How did he have such terrifying power? Isn't he level 4? Magneto Eric muttered in disbelief. Scott, Chris, and the others were equally shocked, while Professor X Charles was stunned as if he had remembered something. As their minds reeled, an even more terrifying scene unfolded. At some point, the city's sky had gathered endless sunlight into a blazing sun, floating high above the boy, casting light over him. The boy facing off against Jean began to appear more ethereal. With silver hair and golden eyes, a strange sun tattoo appeared on his body, making him seem both real and illusory. The boy extended his right hand towards the sun. Everything returns to nothingness, back to the beginning. What? Dark Phoenix Jean was shocked, struggling to resist the sudden burst of infinite light. In an instant, the sun above Syd's head released infinite scorching light, covering the entire city. Countless buildings melted under the high temperatures, and the whole city was engulfed in flames, screams echoing everywhere. If that were all, it might have been bearable, but following the sunlight was an endless force of nothingness. There was a faint sound of space breaking, but it was incomplete, not fully manifesting. Under the light, everything in the large city disintegrated into dust particles. People screamed. In just a moment, a scene akin to a disaster movie unfolded before countless eyes. Under the sunlight's aftermath, the entire city turned to dust and scattered. When everything calmed down, Only a massive crater of dirt remained. The survivors stared in shock. Is he a monster? A demon? Dead, they're all dead. Through drones, viewers felt as if they had witnessed everything firsthand, now left only with fear. Dr. Trask muttered, "Is this the power of mutants?" Next to him, Alessandro was filled with terror. Seeing the city disappear in the light and the Sentinels vanish, they trembled. How could humanity resist such power? In the distance, Professor X Charles was stunned. Just a loss of control caused this catastrophic scene? Not far away, Logan and the others, who survived due to a sliver of Syd's sanity, muttered to themselves. What has Syd done? Is this the so-called light? The light that destroys everything? At this moment, they couldn't help but recall the many times they had heard about the so-called light. Now, they had finally witnessed it, but they wished they hadn't. Syd, just threatened and losing control of his powers, caused this terrifying scene? They were horrified. Not far away, Eric had only one thought left in his mind. Could Charles's Omega-level mutant be him? End of chapter. Chapter 75. The poll is up. Go to my Patreon to vote for your favorite fanfic and get it picked up. It's free. Not long ago, when Eric heard about the description of the light that could destroy everything, he thought the boy was just a level 4 mutant. He didn't realize he had underestimated him. This was nowhere near just level 4. Looking at the nearly completely destroyed city ruins, Eric felt he had been too hasty. Not everyone could be an Omega-level mutant, but if losing control for just a moment could destroy a city, then it could only be an Omega-level mutant. Eric stared straight into the distant sky. An Omega-level mutant was the ultimate existence among mutants, the ultimate threat to humanity. Or rather, a god among mutants. At this moment, the battle in the distance reached its conclusion. Against the rampaging Syd, Jean, who had not yet fully merged and evolved with the Phoenix Force, was defeated. Dark Phoenix Jean panted heavily, half of her body already gone, leaving only her upper body burning fiercely. Despite her body trying to recover, a loss was still a loss. She muttered in disbelief, "I lost to a child?" Looking at the boy hovering in the air not far away, still radiating light, Dark Phoenix couldn't believe it. At this moment, due to her severe injuries, her primary personality began to struggle and awaken. Jean Grey suddenly paused, taking in her surroundings. Seeing the city reduced to ruins and still smoldering, she looked at herself and muttered, "What have I done?" She then looked up at the boy and said, "I'm very sorry." With that, she turned to glance at Scott, Logan, and the others in the distance. Then slowly, she transformed into flames and disappeared. Syd stood there, dazed, his chaotic consciousness quickly clearing. What is this? He looked at the city's ruins and then at his current state, feeling equally stunned. Finally, his gaze fell on the place where Jean had disappeared. The Phoenix Force. Syd sensed that Jean Grey was not dead. It was a strange feeling, but he was sure he was right. Moreover, the Phoenix Force had the power of resurrection. If she had died, he would have been surprised. Syd's attention shifted back to himself. He had returned to his original form, experiencing a series of both positive and negative effects. The negative effects came from his out-of-control rampage. To unleash such a massive power, a price had to be paid. The positive effects came from reaching 100% unlock progress. As for what exactly had changed, he couldn't figure it out immediately, only feeling something strange. Unable to analyze it further, Syd realized he was reaching his limit. Before his power faded completely, he executed an unprecedented spatial transfer. In an instant, he disappeared from the sight of tens of thousands of people. Birds chirped. Syd found himself in a lush, primeval forest. He collapsed under a tree. Jean is dead? The energy disappeared with her? The Darbari were stunned. Their hearts were filled with unwillingness and shock. There was someone on this planet even more special and stronger than Jean? Jean, who possessed that power, couldn't even win? What kind of power did that boy possess? Why was it equally terrifying? Thinking of the boy's power, even they felt a chill. In the distance. Jean? The X-Men were filled with sorrow. Professor, is Jean dead? Did she die at that child's hands? Scott refused to accept reality. While they were mourning, Professor X hesitated and said, "I'm not sure." "What?" Everyone looked at Professor X in confusion. "I seem to sense Jean's mind, but I don't know where she is," Professor X Charles hesitated. Logan and the others were shocked. So, Jean might still be alive? They didn't know whether to be sad or happy. At this moment, Eric suddenly spoke. "We should think about how to find that boy." Professor X looked at him and then nodded. Eric is right. Ha! Facing everyone's confused gazes, Professor X's expression became serious. "I remembered something about Omega-level mutants. You should all know that I discovered an Omega-level mutant some time ago and haven't found him since." He paused, his tone becoming more serious. "Until I saw that child just now, I realized that the Omega-level mutant might be him." Logan and the others widened their eyes. Omega-level mutant? Syd. They understood what this meant. Professor X continued, "That child disappeared just now, probably using spatial transfer. We must find him before other forces do, or the consequences will be unpredictable." Scott asked, puzzled, "Professor, is it that serious?" Professor X nodded. "If he's captured, it would be bad enough. But if someone tries to control him, the consequences would be catastrophic. You saw the scene just now. If that child is controlled, you'll see such scenes often. And let me tell you, that wasn't even the limit of an Omega-level mutant's power. You wouldn't want to see that." Hearing Professor X's description, Logan and the others shuddered, their scalps tingling. "Is this what an Omega-level mutant is? It's terrifying." Otto muttered. "I can't believe that kid's body holds such power," Wolverine Logan sighed. At this moment, they vowed to find him before anyone else did. In the distance. "What do we do now?" The Darbari looked at Margaret. Margaret frowned in thought and said, "Let's find that boy named Syd first. If we can, we'll try to study his body and powers to see what's going on." She couldn't understand why a primitive species on Earth had such immense power. She wasn't the only one baffled. The other Darbari felt the same. Hearing her plan, they all agreed. While they were discussing, Dr. Bolivar Trask and Base Commander Alessandro in the research facility were questioning their lives. For both the woman and the boy, the Sentinel robots were utterly useless? And an entire city. End of chapter. Chapter 76. Dr. Bolivar Trask gritted his teeth. He could improve the Sentinel robots. If they didn't work now, it didn't mean they wouldn't work in the future. They would surely succeed one day. Next to him, Alessandro muttered, "Is that kid really unbeatable, with no limits? An entire city." His eyes were filled with deep fear. After a while, he muttered, "No, he's up against the entire United States. He won't end well. How could a mere mutant possibly stand against a superpower like the United States?" Alessandro thought that the boy would ultimately meet a tragic end. At this moment, the tens of thousands of viewers who watched the entire event were genuinely terrified of mutants. An entire city had disappeared right before their eyes. It vanished under the power of a mutant. Is this really the power of mutants? Can they truly be eliminated? At this moment, they were genuinely terrified of the glowing boy. As time passed, the impact of this event grew. Everyone who knew about it felt fear in their hearts. This incident was documented and became known as the Light Event. The young mutant responsible for the disappearance of an entire city was labeled as a demon or devil by ordinary people. However, among mutants, because of his radiant appearance when using his powers, he was called the Messiah, the savior of mutants, with hopes that he could save them. Birds chirped. In the primeval forest. Ugh! Syd pushed himself up against a tree, coughing and quickly getting to his feet. "Venom, are you still there?" He looked at his right hand. Syd noticed that Venom had suddenly gone silent. He wasn't used to the lack of constant chatter in his ear. It didn't take long for Venom's weak voice to emerge. "I'm here." Venom emerged from his right hand, looking wilted and weak. "What happened to you?" Venom explained. It turned out that while Syd was out of control, even though he didn't intentionally harm Venom, Venom still suffered significant injuries. After recovering a bit, Venom stared blankly at him, muttering, "Syd, you're terrifying. Just a while ago, Syd had seemed like a god. Even now, Venom was still trembling with fear. Just thinking about it scared him." Seeing that Venom was all right, Syd turned his attention to himself. Name: Syd Castell. Age: 16. Remaining lifespan: 137 days. Mutant abilities: Mimicry, Energy Absorption. Current mimicry target: Orochi. Title: Sun God, Earth's Will. Unlock progress 0%. Abilities: Floating Flight, 531/2000, Level 4. Locked. Energy points: 0. Syd's expression became serious, focusing on the 0% unlock progress and the locked abilities. As the sunlight shone on him, and he felt the photon energy gradually recovering in his body, Syd tried using his abilities and discovered something disturbing. He couldn't use dark particle or spatial transfer at all. Moreover, he felt that there was some issue with the Orochi mimicry panel. Is this the price of losing control and using that kind of power? Syd was stunned. How can I recover? Restore the unlock progress? And then the abilities will unlock one by one. Does this mean he can't use any abilities for now? Without his abilities, how could he survive in this dangerous world without dying soon? Wait. Suddenly, Syd remembered something. When the unlock progress reached 100%, he felt like something had changed, sensing something. In addition, he had perceived a new mimicry panel, belonging to the Scarlet Witch. Ignoring the Scarlet Witch's panel for now, he focused on what he sensed when Orochi's mimicry reached 100%. In a vague sense, Syd felt his perspective rising, as if he had a connection with the Earth. However, this connection was not strong. He wasn't sure why, but he couldn't sense much from it. Besides that, Syd felt a certain change, but he couldn't pinpoint what it was. He felt that this change was significant. While Syd pondered, in the Earth 199999 universe, the universe where events involving Iron Man and others took place, in the Library of Camartage. The dimly lit library. Caecilius, dressed in a yellow robe with his hair tied back, a middle-aged man, held an oil lamp in his left hand and flipped through a locked book of forbidden magic with his right. Originally, he was just an ordinary person. The deaths of his wife and children left him grief-stricken. In a tavern, he met Mordo, a disciple of the Ancient One, which gave him the chance to join Camartage. However, even after learning magic and breaking free from worldly concerns, he couldn't forget his wife and children. In fact, his motivation for learning magic was to resurrect his family. Unfortunately, though he had decent talent in magic and even became the senior disciple of Camartage, resurrecting his family through diligent practice was impossible. Caecilius was desperately aware of this. So, some time ago, he asked the Ancient One if he could study the forbidden magic books, hoping to find a way to resurrect his family. He was met with a stern refusal. Unwilling to give up, he secretly came to the library to read the forbidden books. After searching for a while, he found nothing useful. Suddenly, his gaze landed on a page in an ancient book. There was a mysterious ritual depicted, and the text recorded some crucial information. Caecilius touched the page with his hand. It said that through this ritual, one could communicate with a being beyond time. And that being's name? Dormammu? The Lord of the Dark Dimension, Dormammu? Reading the introduction, Caecilius murmured in awe. A being beyond time? How terrifying. The book explained. Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Dimension, possesses immeasurable power, able to grant people strength and immortality. Caecilius became excited. Perhaps he could save them. But as he continued reading, his excitement was dampened. The book warned. Communicating with this being is dangerous. The weak-minded will fall into darkness. The book was full of warnings for readers. But Caecilius, willing to do anything to revive his family, ignored the warnings. Just as he was about to attempt it, he noticed more content in the book. It introduced another being. The book stated, in the East, it is called the Tao. In the West, it is called Aleia, Gaia. I attempted to communicate with this being through rituals, confirming its existence, but received no response. End of chapter. Chapter 77. Aleia. Gaia? Caecilius flipped through the pages of the book. If this being was documented in this book, it must be a comparable entity, right? Also beyond time? Perhaps it too could grant power and immortality? Caecilius' eyes were filled with fervor. However, after reading through the description, he felt a bit disappointed. The book recorded that this being indeed existed but had never responded to anyone. No one had successfully communicated with it, and naturally, no one had borrowed its power. Even the author of the forbidden magic book didn't know why. These great beings were always mysterious and elusive, beyond the reach of mortals, impossible to comprehend. However, there was a benefit. Since it was impossible to communicate with this great being, performing the ritual to communicate with it would likely have no side effects or costs. Caecilius soon found the ritual to communicate with this being. Stroking the magical ritual diagram on the page, Caecilius quickly made up his mind. His desire to resurrect his family made him unwilling to let any opportunity pass, even if it meant trying to communicate with a being that didn't respond to mortals. Ripping out the pages describing this being, Caecilius relocked the forbidden magic book and quietly left the library. It didn't take long, just a few hours, to set up the ritual to communicate with the demon god. Late at night, in a secluded clearing, an array of lit oil lamps surrounded a diagram with peculiar lines. After setting up the magical ritual circle, Caecilius began chanting ancient and cumbersome incantations while making gestures and borrowing magical power. Soon, blue light glowed from the magical ritual. Caecilius sensed something, a great will. However, just as the forbidden book had stated, although he could sense the will, he couldn't do anything with it, not even effectively communicate. Unwilling to give up, Caecilius shouted, "Great demon god, your humble servant calls upon you." The night breeze blew, and nothing happened for a long while. Caecilius looked disappointed, feeling like his hope of resurrecting his family had vanished. Just as he was about to give up, Syd Castell, who was sunbathing and collecting energy points in the primeval forest, suddenly paused. It was as if he were hallucinating. A faint prayer reached his ears. "Great demon god, your humble servant." Syd nearly thought he was hallucinating. "Venom, did you hear anything?" "Syd, no, why?" "Nothing." Syd fell into deep thought. There was no one around, so where was this voice coming from? Instinctively, he responded in his mind. "Servant." Caecilius, who was about to give up, showed excitement and joy. He heard a faint, mysterious voice respond to the word servant. "There's a response?" At that moment, Caecilius felt as if he had won the lottery, hit by a wave of joy. This demon god had responded to him. Suppressing his excitement, he hurriedly said, "Great demon god, my name is Caecilius. I have something to ask of you." He then nervously asked, "Do you have the power to resurrect people?" "I want to ask you to resurrect my family. In the primeval forest." Hearing the nervous prayer, Syd was slightly stunned. Caecilius. This name sounded familiar. After thinking for a moment, Syd remembered who this person was. The main antagonist in Doctor Strange, who sought power and immortality by serving the Dark Dimension Lord Dormammu. He even attempted to break Earth's protective wards to invite Dormammu to invade reality. Of course, he was eventually stopped by Doctor Strange. After Dormammu was expelled, Caecilius was consumed by the Dark Dimension, either devoured by Dormammu or eternally tormented like a living dead. Family. Syd realized why Caecilius was so obsessed with immortality and why he hated the Ancient One. His obsession with immortality likely stemmed from the death of his family, making him fear death. As for his hatred toward the Ancient One, he probably believed the Ancient One knew how to resurrect people but refused to teach him, leading to his disillusionment. And resurrection, while possible in the Marvel Universe, was rare and typically went against the natural order. Syd knew a few ways to achieve resurrection, such as reversing time with the Time Stone or using the quantum realm. However, both methods had consequences. Another possibility was using the eternal flame of Surtur, the fire giant of Asgard, which seemingly had the power to resurrect. Hela, the goddess of death, used it to revive her army. But it was unclear if it was the eternal flame's power, Hela's power, or something unique to Asgardians. Even though Syd knew resurrection methods, even those with side effects, he wouldn't share them freely, especially with someone he didn't know well like Caecilius. At this moment, his attention shifted to the term demon god, used by Caecilius. Demon god? Me? Syd was puzzled. When did he get associated with a demon god? Wait. Syd felt something was off. Since reaching 100% mimicry of Orochi, he had felt a vague connection with the earth. Now, he sensed a connection with where Caecilius was. And Caecilius had a ritual to summon and communicate with him? Calling him a demon god? Syd was a bit surprised. Had the 100% mimicry of Orochi changed that much? No wonder he felt a significant change. This was it. Had Orochi's identity as Earth's will been made real? Syd sensed the other side. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed, feeling a longing. He sensed something he needed over there. Or rather, something Orochi's panel needed. He even felt that absorbing that power would remove the side effects of his previous loss of control. His abilities would return one by one. What is it? After a moment's thought, Syd's mind conjured an image of a blue cube. The Tesseract. What else but this object containing space power could attract him so much? He knew the Tesseract contained the Space Stone, one of the Infinity Stones. And Orochi's power source was primarily space. I must get it, even for a short while. Syd began to ponder. At this moment, Caecilius' cautious voice sounded in his mind. Demon God, can you not do it? His voice carried a hint of disappointment. Syd's eyes flickered, and he quickly made a decision. The next second, a mysterious voice echoed in Caecilius' mind. Yes, I know several ways to resurrect people. If you help me obtain an item, I will tell you how. Hearing the demon god's voice, Caecilius became excited. Demon god, what is the item? The Tesseract, currently in the possession of an organization called S.H.I.E.L.D. You can find a way to obtain it from them. End of chapter. Chapter 78. The Tesseract? Caecilius first felt hope, then anxiety. The item mentioned by this great demon god might not be easy to obtain. What if he failed? No, he couldn't allow that. He thought of something and asked with anticipation, Great demon god, may I borrow some of your power? If I had your power, I would be more confident in obtaining the item. At Camartage, all magical powers were borrowed from demon gods. The sources of these powers were various demon gods, and only by borrowing from them could magic be performed. Borrowing power from demon gods came at a cost, sometimes high and sometimes low. Low-cost borrowing was called white magic, and high-cost borrowing was called black magic. Borrowing from the Vishanti came with very low costs, which was why most of Camartage's magic relied on the Vishanti. Since there was this great demon god, there was no need to borrow power from other demon gods. Caecilius' words made Syd pause. He knew the Marvel magical system was strange and that their magic needed to be borrowed to be performed. However, although Caecilius called him a demon god, Syd was well aware that he wasn't an actual dimensional demon god with power to lend. But, maybe it was possible? Syd was unsure. After hesitating, he casually said, You can try. Seeing the demon god agree, Caecilius' eyes lit up, and he began chanting the spell to borrow power. As soon as the spell was completed, Syd felt a peculiar sensation. It seemed he had a connection with Caecilius, allowing him to transfer something. Syd gave it a try. The next moment, Caecilius looked shocked. In the dim surroundings, a glow resembling sunlight emanated from him. A warm power flowed within him, not abundant but pure and comforting. As it coursed through him, he felt some of his internal injuries heal, and even his mental fatigue dissipated significantly. What a special power! I can't feel any negative effects. Caecilius was astonished. Typically, borrowing power from a demon god came with negative side effects. Caecilius tried various spells and found he could use them normally with this energy. While Caecilius was amazed, Syd was sensing some things. He discovered he could not only lend light energy to Caecilius but also his abilities. Just like Tesseract's Crimson Bands or the Vishanti's Holy Sword, powers unique to demon gods. However, after trying, he was disappointed to find that due to the locked abilities, he couldn't lend out powers like the black particles. However, perhaps the Scarlet Witch's powers could be lent out. But since he hadn't developed the Scarlet Witch's panel yet, there were no powers to lend. At this moment, while transmitting light energy, Syd found a connection with Caecilius, even seeing some of his memories. Most were related to magic, but magic required extensive practice to master, so Syd temporarily ignored them. However, he found something interesting among them. For example, rituals to summon dimensional demon gods. If Caecilius performed this ritual, perhaps Syd could go there? As long as he went there and obtained the Tesseract, his abilities would be restored. However, Syd noticed some issues. He realized there seemed to be only mutants here, no Iron Man, Tony Stark, or other Avengers and S.H.I.E.L.D., or they should have appeared in his view by now. If he went over there and left too many traces, it might cause the two universes to attract and collide. Such an event occurred in Doctor Strange 2 and was indeed very likely to happen. It would lead to unimaginable disaster. Syd pondered. Suddenly, he found a forbidden magical ritual among Caecilius' vast forbidden knowledge. This ritual could merge this world with the other. Syd was astonished. If done correctly, it could avoid a collision. However, the ritual was still just a hypothesis. Especially since it required a vast energy source to drive it and a being of high enough stature with influence in both worlds to perform the ritual. Ignoring the requirements, the ritual was still only a hypothesis with no successful precedent, making it very risky. Syd thought for a moment and realized these problems weren't too hard to solve. Although he didn't have a vast energy source, items like the Infinity Stones did. Both the Time Stone and the Space Stone should suffice for this ritual. Especially the Space Stone, being particularly suited. As for a being of high enough stature, he wondered if he counted? Syd hesitated. He could sense both worlds, suggesting he had influence and connections in both. As for potential failure, Syd's attention turned to the Scarlet Witch's power. Probability manipulation. The Scarlet Witch's mutant power. Even as a child, she inadvertently made a missile that landed near their home a dud. Had she not altered the probability unconsciously, she and Quicksilver might have died back then. Syd pondered, this magical ritual isn't impossible to try, but I need the Tesseract, and the Scarlet Witch's progress must be increased. Setting aside the Scarlet Witch's progress, getting the Tesseract relied on Caecilius. Syd refocused on him. In the dim clearing, Caecilius was trying out spells. As he did, a special mark appeared on his forehead. The mark resembled the sun, a miniature version of the emblem on Orochi's chest. At that moment, the familiar voice of the demon god sounded in Caecilius' ears. As long as you obtain the Tesseract, I will tell you several methods to resurrect people. Moreover, I need you to use the Tesseract to set up a magical ritual. If successful, I can grant you power unique to me. Power unique to this demon god? Caecilius' breathing quickened. The energy in his body was already a taste of something incredible. How much stronger and special would this unique power be? Caecilius' eyes were filled with longing. End of chapter. Chapter 79. At this moment, Caecilius vowed to fulfill the request of the great demon god. The hope of resurrecting his wife and children, along with his desire for power, left him no room to refuse. After explaining to Caecilius the magical ritual he needed to set up, Syd Castell shifted his attention elsewhere. Since the ritual needed to be set up on both sides, Syd began preparing the ritual on his end as well. Fortunately, the materials required for this magical ritual were not difficult to find. Caecilius had prepared everything necessary, and Syd primarily needed the ritual and the incantations, otherwise, he would have been quite anxious. As he drew the magical ritual, Syd's energy points continued to increase under the sunlight. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Syd planned to collect enough energy over time to unlock the Scarlet Witch's panel. Meanwhile, Caecilius sensed the Great Will's departure but did not feel any resentment, accepting it as a matter of course. After handling the magical ritual, he quickly left and began gathering his followers. As the head disciple of Camartage, he had many followers, forming his inner circle. Soon, he gathered 5 trusted mage followers. Seeing their puzzled expressions, Caecilius stood on a platform and said, I know you are curious. Today, I bring you good news. Recently, I used a magical ritual to contact a being beyond time, known as Tao in the east and Aleia or Gaia in the west, a great demon god. I have received power from this being, and he promised me that if I fulfill certain tasks for him, he will grant me power unique to him. Power and immortality, all these are simple for the demon god to grant, as long as we accomplish his tasks. Hearing Caecilius' words, the followers were shocked and hesitant, unsure if what he said was true. Caecilius did not say much more, simply revealing the power within him. Instantly, the brilliance of the sun appeared. Seeing Caecilius glowing and feeling the unique energy, everyone believed him. It was well known that there was no magic source in reality. Magic sources were in various dimensions, controlled by dimensional demon gods. The unique energy here, unlike anything they were familiar with, was undoubtedly from a dimensional demon god. This meant Caecilius had indeed contacted a dimensional demon god and received his promise. Power and immortality? If the demon god could indeed grant these. The mage's eyes showed envy and desire. Seeing their expressions, Caecilius knew they believed him and said, "If you assist me in completing the demon god's tasks, you may also be granted power by him." Immediately, their eyes were filled with eagerness. "What task?" asked Solvi, a black mage. "I need you to gather information on the SHIELD organization and the location of an item called the Tesseract." Following his orders, the 5 mages quickly set to work. With Kamartaj's intelligence network, information on SHIELD and the Tesseract was soon gathered. Even though SHIELD's information was classified, it was insufficient against a long-standing organization like Kamartaj, especially with magical assistance. Late at night, deep underground in SHIELD's lab, where the Tesseract was stored, the sound of a portal opening echoed. To the shock of the night guards, orange sparks flew as a circle of fire expanded. Darren stared in disbelief as he saw the scene beyond the circle, and 6 oddly dressed people in yellow robes. Before he could react, Caecilius and his men stepped through the portal into the lab. "Stop! Raise your hands!" The guards quickly reacted, reaching for their guns. But before they could draw, yellow magical whips disarmed them. "Is this the Tesseract?" Ignoring the guards, Caecilius walked to a circular device. The Tesseract, a blue, glowing cube about the size of a palm, was embedded in the center of the device. Feeling the immense energy from it, Caecilius was awed. No wonder even a dimensional demon god needs this. Using a magical claw, he extracted the Tesseract from the device. As alarms blared, a team rushed towards the lab. The mages didn't give them a chance, extending the corridor with a single spell. By the time they arrived, Caecilius and his followers had already disappeared through the portal. Late at night, SHIELD director Nick Fury received the alert and was furious, shouting in anger. Meanwhile, back at their base, Caecilius wasted no time, using the prepared materials with the other mages to set up the magical ritual. After nearly an hour, Caecilius carefully placed the Tesseract at the center of the ritual. As the Tesseract was placed, blue energy spread from it, filling the ritual lines. The blue glow illuminated the night, leaving everyone in awe. Caecilius immediately contacted the demon god through another ritual. In the primeval forest, collecting energy points, Syd heard the respectful voice. "Great demon god, the ritual is ready. When should we begin?" "So soon?" Syd was surprised. How long had it been? Caecilius had not only obtained the Tesseract but also set up the ritual? Suppressing a smile, Syd glanced at his energy points. Energy points. 13,106. I wonder if it's enough to unlock the Scarlet Witch's panel. He focused on the Scarlet Witch's panel. End of chapter. Chapter 80. Name: Syd Castell. Age: 16. Remaining lifespan: 136 days. Mutant ability: Mimicry, Energy Absorption. Current mimicry target: Wanda. Title: Scarlet Witch, Chaos Magic Wielder. Unlock progress 1%. Asterisk, abilities: not unlocked. Energy points: 13,107. Staring at this brand new panel, Syd's eyes lit up. The next moment, his gaze fell on the 1% unlock progress. Already 1%? I didn't even feel anything. Glancing at the not unlocked abilities section, Syd's lips twitched. After hesitating for a moment, he poured 500 energy points into the unlock progress. Instantly, the progress bar jumped. Unlock progress 5%. For a while, no notification sound appeared. Syd wasn't surprised and continued adding energy points to the unlock progress. Unlock progress 6%. Unlock progress 8%. Unlock progress 11%. The unlock progress increased rapidly. During this process, Syd noticed that the consumption for unlocking the Scarlet Witch was slightly different from that of Orochi. Soon, after adding all the over 10,000 energy points into the unlock progress, the expected notification sound appeared. Unlock progress 31%. Ability. Probability manipulation, unlocked. Ability. Probability manipulation, 0/100, level 1. As soon as the notification sound ended, Syd felt some changes in his body. Probability manipulation. Syd was somewhat disappointed that it wasn't chaos magic. After carefully sensing for a while, he found that aside from a slight increase in reaction speed and feeling more mentally alert, there were no other significant changes. It seems that true mental powers will only come with the awakening of chaos magic. Thinking about mental powers, Syd felt a bit apprehensive. Without mental powers, he lacked confidence. There were simply too many people with mental powers, and he didn't want his memory to be probed or be mentally controlled and enslaved. But it shouldn't be long now. As long as the progress continues to unlock, chaos magic will soon appear. Putting aside the disappointment of not acquiring chaos magic, Syd was still somewhat excited about the probability manipulation ability. After all, probability manipulation was the true core power. Only with probability manipulation, combined with chaos magic, could he achieve reality alteration. This was something that pure chaos magic could not accomplish. Syd, what are you doing? Under Venom's puzzled gaze, Syd picked up a walnut-sized gray stone and made a mark on one side. Then, he tossed the stone into the air while activating the probability manipulation ability, guided by that peculiar sense. Front side. Syd silently commanded. Probability manipulation experience +1. With a thud, the stone hit the ground. Syd checked it and saw it landed on the marked side. Probability manipulation experience +1. Probability manipulation experience +1. Probability manipulation experience +1. Syd tested it 3 more times, and each time it landed on the marked side. Seeing the results, he couldn't help but marvel at the power of this ability. Probability manipulation. Of course, with only level 1, probability manipulation could probably only do trivial things like influencing which side a stone lands on. Modifying the probability of significant events would likely have very weak effects. For example, modifying the success probability of the magic ritual would probably only slightly increase the chances. Thinking this, Syd felt his remaining light energy, realizing it was enough for 100 uses, and began frantically tossing stones. Probability manipulation experience +1. Front side. Front side. At first, Venom didn't notice much, but soon his wide, toothy mouth gaped open. He felt like rubbing his eyes. Syd had thrown so many stones, and each time it landed on the marked side. Syd, how did you do that? Venom asked in disbelief. Syd was becoming more and more amazing, more and more mysterious. Venom deeply doubted if there was anything he couldn't do. Probability manipulation experience +1. Ability. Probability manipulation, 0/500, level 2. That's about it, Syd felt. In this short time, he had only managed to upgrade probability manipulation to level 2. To continue upgrading, he didn't have enough light energy or time. By now, Caecilius was probably getting anxious. The next second, his attention shifted back to Caecilius. The dark clearing felt stifling. Caecilius had activated the magic ritual to contact the demon god but received no response for a while, causing the followers to grow anxious and even skeptical. They began to suspect that Caecilius might be deceiving them and that there was no demon god at all. Facing their skeptical gazes, Caecilius himself felt uneasy and restless. He even started to doubt if everything before was just an illusion, just a dream? Just as he felt lost, not knowing what to do, the familiar profound voice descended like heavenly music. Activate it. Caecilius responded excitedly, yes. He quickly moved to the Tesseract's magical ritual. Under the anxious and expectant gazes of the 5 followers, he activated the ritual. Boom! The entire magic ritual blazed with blue light. At the center of the ritual, the Tesseract shot a massive blue energy beam straight into the sky. The beam shot up hundreds of meters before inexplicably vanishing, seemingly transported to the other side through space. In the primeval forest. Under Venom's shocked gaze, a vast energy beam shot down from the sky, directly into the magic ritual Syd had drawn on the ground. Shielding himself slightly from the gusts, Syd channeled his light energy and, somewhat clumsily, chanted the incantations. As he finished the last syllable, a terrifying pressure bore down on him, as if it would crush him. Thankfully, the pressure was mostly absorbed by the earth through their connection. No wonder it requires a high status. An ordinary person would be crushed into a bloody mist in seconds. With the magic ritual as the center, dust and stones floated up. Terrifying spatial energy radiated, causing birds and beasts to cry out in fear. With no time to think, seeing the magic ritual start to destabilize, Syd activated probability manipulation. Probability manipulation experience +1. The originally unstable magic ritual suddenly stabilized somewhat. But it wasn't enough. Syd found it hard to believe how difficult it was to succeed with this ritual. He felt the pressure again, his bones creaking under the strain. Even with the Tesseract bearing most of the pressure, he was struggling. In a critical moment, on the brink of life and death, his powers surged, emitting a red glow. In a daze, Syd softly uttered 2 words. Fusion. These words seemed to echo through both universes, faintly heard by some powerful beings. Who is it? The Ancient One in Camartage, Odin in Asgard, and other powerful beings opened their eyes. In ways barely perceptible to them, the universe seemed to change. End of chapter. Chapter 81, New Fanfics for the Week poll. The poll is up. It's free. I've already confronted the 5 Kage, and the system just arrived. Savior in the DC Universe. Marvel. I started by containing SCPs. Who is it? What happened? What's going on? Within Camartage, the All-Father Odin of Asgard, and many other powerful beings, a look of confusion flickered in their eyes. The universe had changed beyond their perception? They clearly felt this change. How was this possible? Considering the words they heard before the change began, they deeply suspected this alteration was man-made. But who had such power? The celestial Erishem and others were both puzzled and alarmed, eager to know who could perform such an unfathomable feat. While they took action to investigate the changes and uncover the person responsible, Syd was gasping for breath, supported by the ground. After a while, he stood up, his gaze sweeping around. He found that the environment of the primeval forest hadn't changed much, but the once bright sky had now turned to night. Did it work? Syd let out a sigh of relief. He immediately turned his attention to Caecilius, or rather, the Tesseract. Now, as long as he obtained the Tesseract, he could restore his various abilities and thus have the means to protect himself. Sensing his surroundings, he found that Caecilius wasn't far away, possibly due to the magic ritual. In the next second, he began making his way there, informing Caecilius to take the next steps. In the distance, Caecilius and his followers were in shock. This magic ritual actually worked. Incredible. My God. As mages, they naturally studied the specifics of the ritual before setting it up, which only heightened their shock. A ritual that was almost impossible to complete succeeded? Caecilius and the others had to marvel at the power of the demon god. Besides that explanation, they couldn't fathom how this ritual could succeed. At that moment, the demon god's voice echoed in Caecilius' mind. Destroy the magic ritual and leave. You've probably drawn some attention. Startled, Caecilius knew this wasn't false. The commotion they caused would certainly attract powerful beings. In the next second, he hurriedly used magic to destroy the ritual, pocketed the Tesseract, and left with his followers in a rush. Sure enough, shortly after they left, orange sparks lit up nearby, and a portal was opened. The bald, uniquely charismatic Sorcerer Supreme, the Ancient One, stepped through the portal. With a quick scan of the surroundings, he immediately understood what had happened, a flash of shock in his eyes. Which dimensional demon god had the power to do this? Clearly, he knew the function of this ritual. For a moment, his gaze turned toward the direction Caecilius and his followers had fled. Caecilius, what have you done? The Ancient One realized that Caecilius' fate had changed. The original destiny, likely ending with being consumed by Dormammu, had inexplicably disappeared and altered. Furthermore, Multiple diverging fates had split off, none connected to the previous one. They changed constantly, seemingly influenced by some external force, making his destiny unpredictable. The Ancient One sensed a veil of mystery shrouding Caecilius, making his future hard to discern. Undoubtedly, this was related to the dimensional demon god Caecilius had communicated with. The Ancient One's eyes flashed with curiosity. He felt the need to uncover what Caecilius had been up to recently. While he pondered this, Caecilius, having fled, placed the Tesseract in an open space according to the demon god's instructions. Not long after, Syd arrived. So this is the Tesseract? His gaze fell to the ground. The Tesseract glowed softly, lying there quietly. Despite the earlier consumption, it seemed almost unaffected, just slightly dimmer, recovering even as he watched. Highly unscientific. Syd, don't go near it. I sense danger. Venom warned. Trembling. Syd was well aware. The Infinity Stones were perilous, and approaching them recklessly could be life-threatening, even with the Tesseract's shell. In Captain America, the Red Skull had been transported to space just by touching the Tesseract. After hesitating, Syd decided to touch it. To regain his abilities, he had no choice. He stepped closer, crouched down, and carefully extended his right index finger towards it. If anything goes wrong, I'll use light energy as a barrier. With that thought, his finger touched the Tesseract. Where his finger met the Tesseract, blue light flared. The Tesseract burst with blue light. Boom! A vast blue energy exploded, enveloping Syd. He hadn't expected such a reaction. Suddenly, the energy seemed to find a conduit, flowing into him. His entire body was filled with the Tesseract's blue space energy. Syd felt the broken mimic panel of Orochi rapidly restoring. Soon, he found that the damages from his power surge had vanished. At this moment, even without the Tesseract, he could quickly unlock his abilities with energy points. Moreover, under the Tesseract's influence, his locked abilities were returning at their previous levels. Ability: Black Particle, unlocked. Ability: Reflective Shield, unlocked. Ability: Space Transfer, unlocked. Just as he was about to unlock the next ability, he heard a portal opening. From the corner of his eye under the black hood, he saw a bald head. In an instant, he recognized the person. The Sorcerer Supreme of Kamartaj, the Ancient One. Syd's brow furrowed. Clearly, the Sorcerer Supreme had sensed the Tesseract's energy and came to investigate. End of chapter. Chapter 82. New fanfics for the week poll. The poll is up. It's free. It will finish in 2 days. I've already confronted the 5 Kage, and the system just arrived. Savior in the DC Universe. Marvel. I started by containing SCPs. This is troublesome. Syd's mind raced with thoughts. Given his current abilities, he was almost certain he wasn't a match for the bald-headed sorcerer. After all, the Sorcerer Supreme had guarded Earth for centuries, keeping dimensional demon gods like Dormammu at bay. It was clear she possessed formidable power, far beyond his current capabilities. In the next moment, he considered fleeing. As his hand touched the Tesseract, he felt his space transfer ability being massively amplified. Space transfer experience +1. Just as he prepared to leave with the Tesseract, disappearing in an instant, a yellow energy whip lashed out, gripping the Tesseract tightly. In a flash, his body vanished, but the Tesseract was left behind. Who are you? Gazing at the spot where the cloaked figure had disappeared, the Ancient One's eyes flashed with surprise. She glanced at the Tesseract without much concern. She knew it well and understood that it was something left on Earth by Odin, the king of Asgard. At this moment, all her attention was focused on the mysterious cloaked figure. She could sense that this individual was brimming with a large amount of mysterious energy. Moreover, she had seen him absorbing the energy of the Tesseract. Who was he to be capable of such a feat? What was his connection to Caecilius? These questions lingered in her mind. While the Ancient One pondered, Syd's figure reappeared in a small town 200 kilometers away. Looking at his empty hand, he muttered, "The Tesseract was taken?" His brow furrowed deeply. Just a little more time, and another of his abilities would have been restored. Given a few more minutes, he could have fully recovered his powers. Unfortunately, the Ancient One's timely arrival had disrupted his plans, leaving him with only 3 restored abilities: Black Particle, Reflective Shield, and Space Transfer. Syd found the situation tricky. Retrieving the Tesseract from the Ancient One would not be as simple as taking it from S.H.I.E.L.D., and it was nearly impossible at the moment. The Ancient One's magical prowess aside, she also possessed the Eye of Agamotto, a powerful artifact containing the Time Stone, making her even more formidable. Though the Ancient One avoided using the Time Stone due to its potential consequences, she had warned Doctor Strange against using it except in dire situations. But who knew what would happen if she was pushed to the brink and decided to use the artifact that could control time? Syd pondered deeply for a while and suddenly relaxed a bit. I remember S.H.I.E.L.D. has some weapons powered by the Tesseract, like the energy guns seen in Captain America, the First Avenger. One shot can vaporize a person instantly. Perhaps I can have Caecilius steal some of those weapons. Then I can absorb the energy from them. Syd's eyes lit up. Compared to taking the Tesseract from the Ancient One, stealing from S.H.I.E.L.D. seemed much simpler. However, to keep Caecilius motivated, he needed to offer some tangible rewards. The promises made earlier hadn't materialized yet. Syd deliberated on what abilities to lend to Caecilius. Anything too distinctive would be recognized, so it can only be space transfer and probability manipulation for now. After a moment's thought, he decided to lend Caecilius the space transfer ability first. This would increase his chances of successfully stealing from S.H.I.E.L.D. If needed, Syd could always retract the ability later. The next second, he focused his attention on Caecilius. In the dark forest, Caecilius and his followers were filled with anxiety. They wondered if the promises made by the demon god would come true after completing the task. Preparing to set up a summoning ritual, Caecilius suddenly heard the familiar, enigmatic voice in his mind. There are several ways to resurrect someone. The Eye of Agamotto, the sacred artifact of Kamartaj Sorcerer Supreme, can reverse time. The Eternal Flame of Asgard. As Syd listed the possibilities, Caecilius' eyes widened in astonishment. There were so many methods to bring someone back to life? However, as he listened, he sighed. The difficulty of achieving any of these methods was immense. Even using the Eye of Agamotto required a pure heart to gain its acceptance, as it wouldn't respond to an evil wielder. Caecilius had once considered obtaining the Eye of Agamotto but had failed. The other methods mentioned by the demon god seemed equally challenging to accomplish. Great demon god, these methods are beyond my reach. Is there a simpler way? Caecilius pleaded. There was a pause before the enigmatic voice spoke again. Continue to serve me, and when the time comes, I will help you resurrect your wife and child. Syd made another promise. Though he lacked the power to revive someone directly, he could potentially help Caecilius obtain the eternal flame later. However, Caecilius was unaware of this and felt neither suspicion nor disappointment. Instead, he was filled with excitement and gratitude. He readily agreed to the proposal. Great demon god, what else do you need me to do? Caecilius asked respectfully. I need you to return to S.H.I.E.L.D. and retrieve. Syd outlined the plan to steal the energy weapons. Finally, in Caecilius' exhilaration, he made one more promise. I told you I'd grant you power after completing the ritual. Now I will fulfill that promise. Caecilius felt a connection through which he could utilize a new ability. In the next moment, he vanished from his position and reappeared nearly 10 meters away, much to the astonishment of his followers. Space transfer. Caecilius' excitement was palpable. Although he could use portals, this ability was far more convenient for combat. It significantly boosted his combat and survival capabilities. However, the range was somewhat short. Caecilius felt a bit regretful. Nevertheless, it was still beneficial. He could use portals for long-distance travel and space transfer for short-range moves. While Caecilius rejoiced and his followers expressed envy, Syd felt relieved. Thankfully, Caecilius wasn't arrogant enough to reject the space transfer ability. After all, as a mage, he must have found space transfer quite useful. Maybe it was just Syd who felt it was somewhat limited. Finally, Syd reassured Caecilius. Complete the tasks I assign, and I will lend you more powers. With that, he severed the connection and turned his focus inward. With the awakening of the Scarlet Witch's abilities, Syd was curious about his next mimic target. He tried to sense it, as he had before. Suddenly, his vision blurred, and he saw a figure enveloped in light. In a daze, a name surfaced in his mind. Baldur Odinson, the god of light. As soon as this name appeared, Syd snapped back to reality. Him? The god of light? Syd was astonished. If it were just the title of the god of light, he might not recognize it, but with the Odinson suffix, he knew who it was. In traditional Norse mythology, Baldur, the god of light, was the son of Odin and Frigg, and he was the most beloved of the gods. His death marked the onset of Ragnarok, plunging the world into darkness. His death brought an endless winter, the Fimbulwinter, and heralded the twilight of the gods. With Baldur's death, the world lost its warmth and light. Syd was taken aback. The next mimic target is him? He couldn't imagine what abilities he'd gain from mimicking Baldur. Moreover, this involved Asgard. Unfortunately, he had to finish unlocking the Scarlet Witch's abilities first. But it should be soon. Syd felt a surge of anticipation. As he pondered his powers, time flew by, and dawn broke. The sleeping world had no idea how much things would change upon waking. Birds chirped. In a luxurious villa, Tony Stark yawned and headed to the bathroom, still sleepy. "Good morning, sir," the AIJARVIS greeted in its usual calm tone. "Morning, JARVIS," Tony replied absently, preparing to freshen up. But before he could start, JARVIS continued. "Sir, sorry to interrupt, but I must inform you that significant changes occurred in the world 5 hours ago." Tony, unaware of the gravity, replied casually, "What changes?" As he began brushing his teeth, JARVIS outlined the events. Tony Stark nearly dropped his toothbrush. "Wait, what did you say?" "Mutants." The world had changed drastically, and now there were these so-called mutants? Tony couldn't believe it. He doubted whether JARVIS had malfunctioned or if he was still dreaming. Otherwise, how could such an absurd dream challenge his scientific beliefs? When JARVIS displayed the global changes and information on mutants, Tony Stark pinched himself, reluctantly accepting the truth. "Let me see these so-called mutants." Tony Stark gestured, flipping through the holographic files. By the end, he felt like questioning his life choices, wondering if his scientific knowledge was all for nothing. These mutants exhibited supernatural abilities. How was this even possible? Tony was stunned. "Wait, what's this?" He focused on a headline. "Demon. Devil. Mutant Messiah. City Destruction." Tony couldn't believe his eyes. End of chapter. Chapter 83. The poll has ended. Winner: I've already confronted the 5 Kage, and the system just arrived. Thanks to everyone that voted and reviews. If your favorite fanfic lost, don't worry, it can still be picked up later. Or you can sponsor it by becoming a hyper supporter in my Patreon. Initially, Tony Stark was surprised by the news of mutants, but deep down, he wasn't too concerned, confident in his ability to handle them. That changed when he read the headline. A demon among mutants, the Messiah? A city destroyed by an out-of-control ability? The more Tony read, the more shocked and unnerved he became. An entire city obliterated? He had to question the truth of this report. Could someone really destroy a city? Was this even humanly possible? With JARVIS's help, Tony watched a recent video. A young man in black floated in the sky, radiating intense light. The sun's rays shone directly down, illuminating the entire city. Tony was taken aback. Under the light, countless objects, roads, cars, buildings, people, were reduced to dust particles. When the chaos subsided, all that was left was a massive crater and a few remnants of buildings. Everything else had vanished. At that moment, Tony couldn't ignore the mutant threat any longer, especially this particular mutant. This person was incredibly dangerous. Tony's mind raced, trying to think of ways to counter this threat, perhaps develop something to counteract this mutant's power. While contemplating, Tony also became curious about the boy. Who was he? How did he manage to destroy a city? A flood of questions filled his mind. Meanwhile, S.H.I.E.L.D. had already noticed something amiss. While observing Caecilius, Syd was startled upon hearing the Ancient One's voice. Through the magical ritual, he naturally saw the Sorcerer Supreme in her yellow robes. Facing her question, Syd's eyes flickered as he quickly considered how to respond. Soon, a profound, chant-like voice reached the Ancient One's ears. Consider it mere boredom, with no particular purpose. But you, a Sorcerer Supreme who relies on the dark dimension to sustain your life, seem to enjoy meddling in my affairs. The Ancient One's initially grave expression instantly changed. This unknown demon had sensed it? Syd, of course, was aware of this matter. In the movie, Caecilius had his worldview shattered when he learned the Ancient One was drawing energy from the dark dimension to extend her life, ultimately leading him to ally with Dormammu. However, things were not as Caecilius thought. The Sorcerer Supreme drawing power from the dark dimension was not merely for extending her life. To protect Earth long-term from extra-dimensional entities like Dormammu, she had to draw on the dark dimension's power to extend her life and await a successor. Drawing power from the dark dimension was not without its hardships. One had to endure the dark power's physical corruption and resist its temptations, constantly struggling between light and darkness. This mental fatigue and struggle were not something an ordinary person could endure. Caecilius, lacking such strong will, quickly fell into darkness, becoming a fervent follower of Dormammu. The next successor, Doctor Strange, once asked the Ancient One why she drew on dark power, to which she replied that one must not only care about themselves. After Doctor Strange appeared, she ceased drawing on the dark dimension's power, fearing she might one day be consumed by it and bring unnecessary disaster to the world. Ultimately, she chose to end her suffering by falling from a high building. The profound, chant-like voice continued to echo in the Ancient One's ears. All things are impermanent. All phenomena are not self, all sensations are suffering. Nothing in this world is eternal, nor is anything fixed. Everything must endure the baptism of suffering. Sorcerer Supreme, your suffering has been enough. Choose to ally with me, and I will grant you power and life, freeing you from the dark power's corruption and pain. Hearing the profound voice continually sounding in her ears, the Ancient One did not feel relieved but instead grew more solemn. In just a few words, she felt the demon's terrifying nature more intensely. Dormammu could never speak such words. The next moment, Syd felt the connection severed as the Ancient One ended the ritual. Syd felt a bit regretful but not surprised. Honestly, what he had said was half true, but the offer of power and life was genuine. Compared to drawing from the dark dimension, his light energy and chaos magic were more suitable for any sorcerer. Especially light energy, which was not only positive but also seemed to sustain life. After all, despite suffering from multiple cancers, he had managed to extend his life through light energy, indicating its complexity beyond mere appearance. Syd pondered. However, setting a long-term plan and whether it yielded results didn't matter to him. Success was good, but failure was also acceptable. As he basked in the sun, gathering light energy, time quickly passed, and it was soon the third morning. The bright morning sunlight shone, and the fresh scent of dew was strong. Inside the dilapidated wooden house, in the dim light, about 20 black energy guns could be seen on the table. These were the results of Caecilius and his team's efforts during this period. If S.H.I.E.L.D. had not discovered it early, the entire warehouse might have been emptied. Although S.H.I.E.L.D. still had plenty of these weapons, obtaining more would now be more difficult. S.H.I.E.L.D. had already deployed heavy guards, and Caecilius would have to plan carefully to continue acquiring them. During these 2 days, Caecilius had also been planning. Syd placed his hand on one of the energy guns. Quickly, the spatial energy in the gun became agitated, instantly drawn by his Orochi powers. Blue energy glowed, seeping up Syd's palm and rapidly entering his body. As he absorbed the gun's energy, a previously near-recovered ability quickly unlocked. Ability: Divine Finger, unlocked. The notification sounded. Syd glanced at the remaining 20 energy guns. Time passed as one by one, the energy guns were absorbed. Ability: Spirit Light Column, unlocked. Ability: Soul Extraction, unlocked. Notifications kept sounding. In the end, only Sunshine and Floating Flight remained unrecovered. Why couldn't these guns have more energy? Looking at the over 20 Tesseract energy guns he had already drained, Syd felt a bit disappointed. The two most crucial abilities had not recovered. Then, his attention shifted to the Scarlet Witch panel. Energy points, 39,573. Unlock progress, 31%. Almost 40,000 energy points. I wonder how much the Scarlet Witch mimicry progress will increase. Syd's eyes showed anticipation. Could chaos magic be unlocked? What changes would happen to his body? The next moment, he added all the energy points to the unlock progress. The 31% unlock progress blurred for a moment and then changed. Unlock progress, 70%. Simultaneously, a notification sounded in Syd's surprised gaze. Ability: Chaos Magic, unlocked. Ability: Chaos Magic, 0 out of 100, level 1. In an instant, he felt a difference in his body. A familiar warm current appeared, quickly flowing through his entire body, with his cells and genes changing. In a short time, his genetic cells became more mysterious, housing more enigmatic power. Whoa, what's happening? Venom exclaimed, crawling out from Syd's right hand, looking shocked. Just now, Syd's body had changed again. Whether it was his illusion or not, Venom felt Syd's body had become even more mysterious. Just staying in his body for a moment, Venom felt his strength increase significantly. As Syd's body grew more mysterious, Venom, residing in his body, also became much stronger. Most notably, Venom's suit could now perfectly withstand bullets from handguns and rifles. Perhaps now, only special armor-piercing rounds could break his defense. Venom was confident. He was now much stronger than that foolish half-brother. This period of accumulation was enough to overwhelm him. If we meet again, hee-hee, I'll give you a surprise, Venom muttered, both shocked and delighted. Syd ignored him, focusing on his body's changes. At this moment, his nerves were extremely active, with heightened thoughts and reactions to stimuli. Is this mental power? Syd felt a force in his mind. Though weak, it was still significant compared to having none. Before, even if other mental ability users attacked him, he might not notice. Now, with this mental power, he could fully detect and defend against attacks from other mental ability users. Moreover, as his chaos magic level increased, his mental power might also grow. Momentarily disregarding these changes, Syd focused on a mysterious power within him. Raising his right hand, he attempted to channel that mysterious power. Is this chaos magic? Syd murmured. A red glow appeared on his right hand. End of chapter. As they compiled and reviewed anomalies, every agent present was shocked. My God, it's like we're in a different world. How did these people and things suddenly appear? Most changes weren't too drastic, but the sudden appearance of so many mutants was alarming. Are they Inhumans? Nick Fury flipped through the files, looking grim. He remembered the obelisk shield had once confiscated. Most who touched it died, but the few who survived gained superpowers. Research revealed these individuals had a special Inhuman gene. Initially, Fury thought these mutants might be Inhumans. But after reviewing more information and videos, he had to reconsider. Under the watchful eyes of several agents, the young man in the video pointed skyward, and a blinding light erupted. Buildings melted in the intense heat, flames engulfed the city, and screams echoed everywhere. In the end, the city was reduced to dust, the aftermath of the sunlight's residual energy. Gasping sounds filled the room. Every person was horrified. Fury gripped his hand tightly, his one good eye fixed on the video of the boy in the sky. He had to admit, these mutants were far scarier than the Inhumans, capable of such terrifying feats. In such a short time, a whole city was wiped out. Both the woman at the beginning and the boy who ultimately destroyed the city were immensely terrifying. Fury reached for a bulge in his pocket, a black beeper. This pager was for summoning Captain Marvel. Fury was torn, unsure whether to call her back from space. With Captain Marvel here, they could surely counter this mutant boy, perhaps even kill him. Fury had great confidence in Captain Marvel. This mutant must be contained. If he loses control again, the consequences would be unimaginable. He murmured. Fury began strategizing how to capture this mutant boy with minimal casualties, then control him to prevent another incident, or eliminate him if necessary. This mutant was too dangerous. Fury was baffled by how such a small body could unleash such devastating power. His mind was filled with questions. If it came to it, he would call Captain Marvel to deal with this mutant. Investigate this mutant thoroughly. Find his location and devise a foolproof capture plan. Fury ordered sternly. Agents immediately began their tasks, with a few exchanging glances, their eyes glinting with a hidden agenda. We must get this weapon of mass destruction for Hydra. He's ours. Hydra operatives were equally eager to find this city-destroying boy and analyze his weaknesses. As long as he was a living being, he must have vulnerabilities and moments of carelessness. No one was invincible. Former S.H.I.E.L.D. director and undercover Hydra agent Alexander Pierce was confident. Once they found the mutant boy and successfully captured him, they could brainwash him into becoming Hydra's ultimate weapon of terror. Then, who could stand against them? Pierce felt a surge of excitement. Simultaneously, S.H.I.E.L.D. and other organizations were secretly investigating the cause of the world's sudden changes and the emergence of these anomalies. As agencies took action, American citizens waking up that morning were in for a shock. Especially in places like Hell's Kitchen, it was a terrible day. Who would have thought that after a night's sleep, the world would become even more dangerous? Mutants. Damn mutants. People were filled with fear, especially upon discovering information about Syd Castell. These monsters, especially that freak. Damn it, will I be gone by tomorrow morning? They felt an unprecedented sense of insecurity. While agencies and even superheroes sprang into action, Syd was diligently collecting energy points. With the sunlight beaming down, his energy points steadily increased. Photon energy +1. Photon energy +1. Syd knew many were searching for him. Seems I need a bit of a disguise. He discarded his black attire, planning to find new clothes, and had Venom transform into a black mask to cover most of his face. He hoped this would buy him some time to restore more of his powers before they found him. I wonder how Kelus is doing. Has he managed to get those Tesseract-powered weapons? Thinking of his capable subordinate, Syd's eyes gleamed with curiosity. The next moment, he focused his attention on Kelus. End of chapter. Chapter 84. Syd's attention had just shifted to his connection with Kelus when he couldn't help but show a hint of surprise. How long had it been? And Kelus had already managed to acquire some. On a wooden table, 7 black energy guns powered by the Tesseract were displayed. In the center of each gun, a faint blue light flickered, storing the energy of the Tesseract. At this moment, Kelus, seated in front of the table, was pulling something out from a small portal he had just opened in front of him. Upon closer inspection, it was another energy gun powered by the Tesseract. Did they find the warehouse for these super weapons? Syd's mouth twitched. Did they have a mole inside S.H.I.E.L.D.? Otherwise, how could they have found the storage for such dangerous weapons so quickly? Looking at the energy guns on the wooden table, Syd felt tempted. With these energy guns, his locked abilities could surely recover quite a bit. Moreover, before S.H.I.E.L.D. discovered them, Kelus might be able to obtain even more of these weapons. After all, compared to the Tesseract, these mass-produced weapons weren't that heavily guarded. While Kelus was busy snatching energy guns from the S.H.I.E.L.D. warehouse, the Sorcerer Supreme, Ancient One, had also figured out many things. Among them was the emergence of mutants. Looking at the woman unleashing terrifying energy on the screen and the black-clad youth in the sky who easily destroyed a city, the Ancient One's expression became slightly grave, her attention heightened. She also noticed a sense of familiarity, and soon recognized the black-clad youth in the sky as the mysterious figure she had encountered not long ago. However, she quickly dismissed it. Compared to the dimensional demons, she was less inclined to involve herself in Earth's internal matters. During this period, she also learned about Kelus' actions. Is this the demon? The Ancient One was perusing an ancient tome that described this demon, her expression growing more serious. At the same time, she was puzzled about the demon's intentions. What exactly was it planning? Why create such grand events? What benefit did it get from this? Unable to understand, the Ancient One decided to communicate directly. Skillfully arranging a magical ritual, she soon contacted this mysterious entity. She inquired, "Unknown demon, what is your purpose? Why are you creating such major events? Chapter 85. Syd's right hand glowed with red light. In the next second, the black guns that were placed on the table floated up in unison. They moved erratically in the air. Chaos magic experience +1. Syd controlled their floating while pondering. It seems the power at level 1 is quite weak. He could clearly feel that floating this many guns was already quite taxing, and he could probably only float about a dozen more before reaching his limit. Other than telekinesis, Syd didn't notice any other differences with chaos magic. I wonder if I can use chaos magic for mind control. Syd remembered that at close range, chaos magic could confuse minds, creating illusions in the target's brain. However, the only one left in the room was Venom, who was staring in shock, and Venom's mental resistance was nearly maxed out, making it impossible to test the effects. Bang bang bang. After putting down the guns, Syd furrowed his brow and tried to alter reality. The next second, both his hands emitted red light, enveloping the table. However, to his disappointment, the table remained unchanged for quite some time. Is the chaos magic level too low? Syd felt a bit disappointed, but then thought it made sense. If level 1 chaos magic could do such things, early Wanda wouldn't have been so weak. Of course, it might also be related to the fact that reality alteration could only be activated in a state of emotional agitation and loss of control, making it a passive ability. Forget it, I should focus on leveling up chaos magic first. Chaos magic experience +1. Chaos magic experience +1. Chaos magic experience +1. Syd's hands glowed red as he practiced chaos magic. In the following time, various objects in the room continuously floated up. Chaos magic experience +1. Since it was only at level 1 and his light energy was abundant, it didn't take long for the notification to sound. Chaos magic experience +1. Ability. Chaos magic, 0/500, level 2. As chaos magic reached level 2, Syd felt his light energy limit increase slightly, absorbing sunlight continuously from the window. Additionally, the telekinesis limit of chaos magic increased significantly. Now, he could lift objects weighing over 100 kilograms, enough to easily lift an adult. Level 2 is still a bit weak, though my mental power has increased significantly. Syd felt his mind becoming more active, making the use of chaos magic much smoother. A red glow flickered on his hand, and the next second, he directed it to the center of the wooden table. With a bang, the table was blown apart, leaving a hole in it. Not bad, but not great. Syd was somewhat dissatisfied and continued practicing chaos magic. Time passed, and 2 days later in the morning, the notification sounded. Chaos magic experience +1. Ability. Chaos magic, 0/1000, level 3. With a casual flick, under Venom's surprised gaze, the red glow flashed, and the entire wooden table shattered into pieces, even leaving a pit in the ground. The next second, both of Syd's hands glowed with the unique red light of chaos magic, and his entire body floated up under its power. It works! Syd tested it and found that the speed wasn't as fast as his floating flight, and the consumption was similar to using telekinesis, significantly more than the steady state of floating flight. Well, it's still usable. At least it's a flight method until floating flight is restored. Sensing the increased light energy within him, Syd murmured, "It's time to leave this place." He had been in this house for several days, and if he didn't leave soon, someone might come knocking. "Syd, are we finally leaving this boring place?" Venom asked excitedly. Syd nodded, his figure flashing and disappearing from the house. 2 hours later, Syd was walking along a secluded path, now dressed entirely in white. To avoid recognition, he had chosen all-white clothing. White shirt, white pants, white mask, and even white shoes. As for Venom, he had turned it into a black eye mask, butterfly-shaped, somewhat resembling the masks of Wolverine and Jean from the comics. Suddenly, urgent footsteps and a stern shout came from ahead. "Stop, mutant ahead. Raise your hands and stand still." 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, were running towards Syd, with 4 armed police officers chasing them. "Get out of the way." A young woman with magenta hair and light green eyes, running at the front, called out to Syd in a panic. Syd furrowed his brow and was about to step aside. However, one of the 4 police officers chasing them glanced at a palm-sized monitor, and then shouted at the strangely dressed man in white standing nearby, "Don't let him get away. He's a mutant too." What? Both the 3 mutants, the other 3 police officers, and the viewers watching the live feed of the capture were surprised. Not only were they surprised, but the tens of thousands of viewers watching the capture operation through cameras were also a bit puzzled. Then, many of the viewers grew excited. Since the terrifying light incident several days ago, society's and the government's attitudes towards mutants had worsened, becoming even more hostile. The government had started capturing mutants, and to reassure the public and make them believe mutants could be defeated, many capture operations were broadcast live, including this one. So, seeing another mutant appear, the viewers felt their fears ease and grew excited. God bless, another mutant has appeared. Looks like the officers are going to score again. Hurry up and catch him. As the viewers eagerly watched, the 4 police officers exchanged glances and immediately raised their special guns, firing at Syd as well. Bang bang bang. Small injection darts containing mutant suppressants quickly shot towards Syd. However, just as the 3 mutants looked panicked and the police and viewers were filled with anticipation, the darts stopped mid-air. What? End of chapter. Chapter 86. What? They stopped? What's going on? The 4 police officers looked bewildered, and the tens of thousands of viewers were equally astonished. The panicked trio stood frozen. At that moment, red light glowed from the hand of the man in white. Is that a mutant ability? What kind of power is this? Telekinesis? The viewers quickly realized and breathed a sigh of relief. They thought something serious had happened, but it turned out to be a mutant ability. As long as the power was revealed, it was fine. This ability looked like telekinesis, which shouldn't be too frightening. The fact that this person could stop injection darts didn't mean he could stop metal bullets. The kinetic energy was completely different. Recently, both police and viewers had seen many strange abilities, and this initial shock wasn't new to them. But without exception, they all got captured in the end. The viewers were filled with confidence. Syd glanced at the transparent darts suspended in mid-air. In an instant, he knew what they were. An injectable agent that suppressed mutant abilities. He waved his hand. The next second, the darts reversed direction and shot towards the police officers with a swoosh. Dodge quickly. The 4 officers were alarmed and tried to evade, but the darts seemed to lock onto them, making escape impossible. With a soft thud, the needles pierced their bodies. Fortunately, the serum was designed specifically for mutants and had no effect on them. The officers sighed in relief. They quickly raised their real firearms and started shooting at Syd. Ah! Blink and her companions were shocked. These were real bullets. Then, to their amazement, the 8 or 9 bullets also stopped mid-air. One of the officers, a white man named Donald, saw that bullets were ineffective and quickly threw something from his belt. A black round object arced through the air. Boom! With a violent explosion, flames enveloped Syd. At that moment, both the officers and the tens of thousands of viewers breathed a sigh of relief. This was a specially made bomb that could penetrate steel doors, designed to deal with mutants who posed a significant threat to officers. But to everyone's shock, including Blink's group and others, Syd stood unharmed after the flames dissipated. A red glow surrounded him, seemingly protecting him from the bomb. This mutant's ability could resist a bomb? Before the police and viewers could recover, Syd waved his hand, and the remnants of the bullets shot back at the officers. Screams filled the air as the 4 officers fell to the ground, writhing in pain. Syd walked forward, crouched down, and placed his right hand near the fallen officers. "What are you doing?" "No, stop!" Ignoring their fearful shouts, Syd's hand emitted a red glow that seeped into their heads. He tried to use his mental abilities to induce their deepest fears. Quickly, the officers' eyes filled with terror as if they were witnessing their worst nightmares. Syd pondered. Are they trapped in illusions? He placed his hand on one officer's forehead, and his mental power delved into the man's mind. In the dark night, inside a dilapidated old mansion, Syd saw the man being chased by a ghostly woman, his face full of fear. Afraid of ghosts? This guy's deepest fear is ghosts? Interesting. Syd found it amusing and checked the other 3 officers' minds. 2 of them had common fears, but the last one startled him. In the illusion, a familiar black-clad figure floated in the sky, coldly watching everything below like ants. The next second, a destructive light enveloped everything. No. Monster. Monster. The officer cowered in fear, shouting and trembling. Syd was taken aback. This guy's deepest fear is me? He couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Was he really that terrifying? After a brief exploration of his mental powers, Syd stopped. However, even though he released them, the viewers watching through drones, and the trio of Blink, looked at him like he was a monster. Especially when they saw the officers waking up, pale and terrified, screaming in fear. Blink and her companions looked at Syd with even more strange expressions. What did he do? Another powerful mutant, after that city-destroying light demon? The viewers felt a rising terror and unease towards mutants, mixed with jealousy. At that moment, footsteps sounded from afar, and 5 more police officers approached. Syd frowned, glancing at the 4 fallen officers. The next second, a red glow enveloped them, and he flung them towards the approaching officers. Screams filled the air as the 5 officers were knocked down. Before leaving, Syd noticed the movement in the sky, and his right hand gathered red light. With a casual flick, the drone filming from above exploded and crashed. Taking one last look at the distant officers, Syd quickly left. He didn't want to make a big scene before fully regaining his powers. His actions were a necessity, so he decided to test his chaos magic. Watching him leave, Blink's group exchanged glances and hurriedly followed. Hearing their footsteps, Syd frowned and glanced at them, his gaze lingering slightly longer on Blink. He recognized this young girl. Red hair and green eyes were rare, especially someone resembling a certain actress. Clearly, this was Blink from the X-Men, the one who could open portals but was ultimately killed by Sentinels in Days of Future Past. And this Blink seemed quite young. "Hey, wait for us," the white youth among the trio called out. Syd slowed down slightly to hear what they had to say. The green-eyed Blink looked at him with hope. "In these dangerous times, we mutants should help each other and unite to resist the coming crisis. Your power is impressive. Would you be interested in joining our group?" Syd shook his head. Staying in one place, waiting to be found, he doubted they could resist the Sentinel robots when they came. End of chapter. Chapter 87. Seeing his refusal, Blink and her companions were disappointed. They tried to persuade him a bit more, but seeing that he had no intention of joining them, they gave up and started chatting. Blink sighed, a hint of anger appearing on her face. "Those people are really too much. They'll do anything to capture us." After sharing some of their experiences, Blink's eyes showed unwillingness, and she sighed again. If only that mutant messiah were here. With him around, those people wouldn't dare to mess with us. The young white man, Al, said angrily, "Yeah, if Messiah were here, he'd definitely give those guys a hard time." "You think so too, right? Wait, you don't know Messiah? What mutant doesn't know him by now?" Seeing Syd's strange expression, Al frowned. He continued, with admiration in his voice, "He's an Omega-level mutant, capable of easily destroying a city. He's like a god among mutants. Hey man, as a mutant, how can you not know him? You must have come from the backwoods." Listening to his rambling, along with the agreement from Blink and the other companion, Syd's expression grew even more peculiar. "Ahem, you're right. What else could he do?" He just agreed. Before they parted ways, Blink and her companions told Syd that if he had nowhere to go, he could find them. Also, they implored him to inform them if he had any news about Messiah, clearly showing their idolization. Syd vaguely agreed and then shook his head, walking away alone. They separated here, but the previous incident did not end so easily. Things didn't go as Syd expected, simply fading away. On the contrary, the video of his actions spread across the internet, drawing significant attention. Wow, he dealt with so many people so easily? Who is this guy? Another powerful mutant? This guy with the glowing red powers looks really strong. When will the government capture him? We don't want to see another city-destroying freak. He must be dealt with. Netizens buzzed with discussions, each person feeling a mix of fear and anxiety. Especially with this powerful-looking mutant, it only heightened their unease. Apart from ordinary citizens, Mutants also saw the video. Glowing red light. What ability is this? Telekinesis? Mind control? In the X-Men, Cyclops, Scott Summers, watched the video with a puzzled expression. Storm, Aurora Monroe, standing beside him, shook her head. No, Scott. Look at the red glow in his hand when he blasted the drone. That's not just telekinesis. Professor X, Charles Xavier, nodded. This mutant also has other mental abilities. He adjusted the video, pointing to the scene where the white-clad man controlled the 4 police officers. Are they trapped in illusions? Cyclops quickly guessed, commenting, he has great potential. Professor X, Storm, and the others agreed with his assessment. It's surprising to see another capable mutant emerging so quickly. Though not as powerful as the Omega-level mutant Messiah, he's quite impressive. His abilities show significant potential. I think we should invite him to join the X-Men. The X-Men proposed this idea, and Professor X agreed, thinking it would be beneficial to recruit him. At that moment, Wolverine, Logan, suddenly asked, Hey, Cyclops, any news on that kid, Syd? Cyclops glanced at him. No, we're still looking. All right. Wolverine shrugged helplessly. In the crowd, the burly and tall Colossus watched Professor X and the others, looking hesitant. He was considering whether to reveal the child's identity to Professor X. While they discussed this, the Brotherhood of Mutants also noticed this new mutant. Pyro and Toad were surprised. Impressive, Magneto, Eric Lenscher, remarked. Should we invite him? Mystique asked. Like the X-Men, they also saw the potential in this white-clad man. Although he wasn't as powerful as the Omega-level Messiah, he was still very formidable among mutants. No exception, they also paid attention to him. If they found any leads on him, they would definitely invite him to join the Brotherhood to fight against humans. In addition to ordinary citizens and mutants, several government agencies also noticed Syd. In S.H.I.E.L.D., Fury's single eye flashed with contemplation, considering the possibility of recruiting him into the Avengers. After a while, he felt the task was tricky. This guy's identity might be unacceptable to the public. He decided to observe for a while. If this capable individual's character wasn't too bad, they might attempt to recruit him. Otherwise, their lab could use more test subjects. The Hidden Hydra organization within S.H.I.E.L.D., a terrorist group, also noticed Syd. A powerful weapon, Pierce praised. Soon, the mission to capture this white-clad man was assigned. Although his importance was considered lower than that of the mutant Messiah, they still sent a significant number of agents. In their eyes, he was an excellent candidate for brainwashing. If they could brainwash him, they might use his mental abilities to control the terrifying mutant Messiah. If they succeeded, they would hit the jackpot. Controlling the terrifying Messiah, who could resist them then? While S.H.I.E.L.D. had their plans, Base Commander Alessandro of Base 23 was watching the video with Dr. Bolivar Trask. Dr. Trask, how's the production of Sentinel robots going? Commander Alessandro asked. Dr. Trask, while operating the computer, replied, We've produced over 400 units so far. That many? Alessandro's eyes lit up with interest. Doctor, do you think these Sentinels could take down Messiah? Dr. Trask was stunned for a moment, then instinctively replied, No way. With his city-destroying power, our chances are slim unless we have more Sentinels. End of chapter. Chapter 88. Listening to his analysis, Commander Alessandro shook his head. Doctor, have you considered that the Messiah might not be as strong as we think? What do you mean? Destroying a city isn't strong enough? Dr. Bolivar Trask was a bit taken aback. Commander Alessandro explained, Of course, I'm not saying the Messiah isn't powerful. What I'm suggesting is that his endurance might not be as long as we think. After observing several of his attacks, I noticed that whenever the Messiah uses that all-destroying light, he always retreats afterward. This suggests something, Doctor, and I think you understand. Upon hearing this, Dr. Trask's eyes lit up. You mean? Yes, we can send waves of Sentinel robots to exhaust that guy. If your guess is correct, then this is an excellent plan. Dr. Trask paced excitedly in the lab, a look of exhilaration in his eyes. At that moment, he seemed to envision the so-called Messiah falling at the hands of his proud creations, the Sentinels. He muttered, There aren't enough Sentinels now, but we're running out of funds. Alessandro smiled slightly. Don't worry, Doctor. I'm sure the senators will willingly allocate us a large sum of money. The Sentinels will only increase in number. Dr. Trask agreed. If they didn't want to live in fear of the Messiah forever, they would certainly do whatever it took to eliminate him. Despite having a solid plan, he still felt the need to take additional precautions. He said, I need you to go to the X-Mansion and capture that girl named Anna. She can absorb the abilities and life force of other mutants through contact and use those abilities herself. She will be of great help in perfecting the Sentinels. With her, countering the Messiah will be much more certain. Dr. Trask spoke solemnly. Commander Alessandro was startled, but then nodded. He had also noticed some deficiencies in this generation of Sentinels. Apart from their ability to change shape, many powers couldn't be replicated. Maybe, with that girl named Anna, everything would change? At that time, he wanted to see how the Messiah could resist them. No matter how powerful he was, could he fight against countless Sentinels? Your final fate can only be to become a test subject in my lab, dead or alive. Alessandro smiled. Apart from their plans to deal with the mutant Messiah, the mysterious man in white also caught their attention. Before long, 10 Sentinels were dispatched from the factory at the request of government agencies, intended to capture this white-clad mutant. While various organizations were mobilizing, Syd Castell was currently hiding and absorbing sunlight, aiming to quickly bring the Scarlet Witch's unlock progress to 100%. He was curious and eager to see what changes would occur when the Scarlet Witch's abilities were fully unlocked. Time passed quickly, and it was soon noon on the 5th day. What's approaching? Sensing danger approaching, Syd glanced at the panel. Energy points. 79,631. Unlock progress. 70%. Glancing at the energy points, Syd thought, I wonder how much progress this will bring. The next second, he allocated all the energy points to the unlock progress. The 70% progress blurred for a moment and then changed. Unlock progress. 100%. Energy points. 1951. 100% already? And there's some left over? Syd was surprised. He knew that the last 30% for Orochi had taken a lot of time. He expected this time to reach maybe 90-something%, but it was actually full? The next second, he didn't have time to think, as the changes in his body interrupted his thoughts. A warm current flowed through his body, with his genes becoming increasingly complex. Boom! A red glow erupted from him, extending several meters around him. Syd's eyes, which had turned golden from sunlight exposure, began to take on a red hue. 2 scarlet points flickered in his pupils. Ability. Chaos Magic. 0/2000, Level 4. Ability. Probability Manipulation. 0/1000, Level 3. Syd felt a surge of power throughout his body, his nerves exceptionally active, as if he could do anything. At the same time, he noticed that the probability manipulation ability seemed to have merged more deeply with chaos magic. Probability manipulation and chaos magic both leveled up? Syd clearly felt the power within chaos magic had greatly increased. He even suspected that his current strength was very close to Scarlet Witch's frenzied state in Avengers Endgame, where she nearly tore apart Thanos without the Infinity Stones. After all, Thanos, even without the stones, was no ordinary opponent, capable of shattering Captain America's vibranium shield with a mere blade, showcasing his immense strength. And the Scarlet Witch nearly ripped him apart. Moreover, Syd estimated that the power of chaos magic would fluctuate with his emotions, making it hard to accurately gauge his strength. Chaos magic experience +1. A red glow enveloped the ground. With a boom, under Venom's surprised gaze, a large pit about 2 or 3 meters wide appeared, with dirt and rocks floating in the air. Syd felt extremely relaxed, not exerting much force at all. Pausing for a moment, he didn't continue testing because Venom sensed danger approaching. Syd, be careful. Venom said seriously. Syd nodded, staying alert in the secluded alley while also focusing slightly on his internal energy. The light energy within him continued to increase with the sunlight. He estimated that the current light energy should allow him to use 3rd-level abilities over 100 times and 4th-level abilities around 80 times. Of course, chaos magic was based on duration, so it was roughly the same overall. Light energy is still not enough. Syd couldn't help but complain. While he was alert, 10 fully armed soldiers and 10 sentinels were rapidly approaching from the distant sky. Above them, several drones floated, their cameras clearly recording the capture operation. Netizens discussed excitedly. 10 sentinels? Haha, let's see how that white-clad weirdo escapes. He's doomed. After all, he's no mutant messiah. Another powerful mutant is about to die. Netizens were buzzing with discussions. Meanwhile, the mutants watching the live broadcast were worried and scared. During this time, they had privately given this white-clad man the nickname White Knight. If the White Knight died, it wouldn't be long before it was their turn. So they worried about the White Knight and feared what would happen to them if he died. Watching the battle, both the X-Men and the Brotherhood of Mutants had a foreboding sense of the outcome. No one knew better than they did about the power of the Sentinels. Not everyone was a mutant messiah who could easily deal with Sentinels. To ordinary mutants, Sentinels were monsters, their nemesis. End of chapter. Chapter 89. Under the watchful eyes of hundreds of thousands of viewers, the X-Men, the Brotherhood of Mutants, and Blink's group, the mysterious figure in white came into view. Unfortunately, despite what Blink and the other mutants hoped, they could only watch as the Sentinels approached the white-clad man, surrounding him. They could do nothing to intervene. The audience, however, was filled with anticipation, eager to see the Sentinels take down this recently emerged, powerful mutant. Soon, the two sides were 10 meters apart, staring at each other. Syd looked at the Sentinels, frowning slightly, feeling uncertain. For these flying, shape-shifting, laser-shooting Sentinels, he wasn't sure if his current chaos magic could handle them. In the distance, 10 soldiers stood with their guns, choosing not to approach or attack, leaving everything to the Sentinels while they stood by. The next second, all 10 Sentinels flew towards Syd, their heads glowing, ready to fire lasers. Syd frowned, and red light burst from his hands. Then, to the amazement of the audience and mutants, he slowly floated up. At the same time, a faint red shield appeared around him. Syd's right hand reached out, grabbing one of the Sentinels in the air and hurling it towards the others. With a loud crash, 5 Sentinels were knocked off balance, interrupting their laser attacks. As for the remaining 4, their head lasers had already fired. At that moment, the audience watched with bated breath. Let's see how he dodges this. That's high-energy laser. This guy in white is in trouble. To their shock, Syd simply raised his left hand slightly, and the red glow around him intensified, thickening the shield. Boom! 4 laser beams collided with the red shield. The next second, what they expected, the shield breaking, did not happen. Instead, the shield blocked the laser attacks from the 4 Sentinels. What? Is his ability that strong? Both the hundreds of thousands of viewers and the mutants were stunned. They had thought the white-clad mutant was somewhat powerful, but they never imagined he could block 4 laser beams. If it were an ordinary mutant, they would likely be finished by now. Syd, continuously pushed back by the laser impact, noticed that the energy shield was holding up without signs of breaking. He then raised his right hand towards the nearest Sentinel. A red glow enveloped it. The black Sentinel quickly reacted, its program prompting it to change form. Its skin, like fish scales, swiftly turned silver, mimicking the form of Colossus. In this state, its hardness was second only to adamantium, the metal comprising Wolverine's skeleton. Seeing the Sentinel transform, the surprised audience breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, it changed. This Sentinel is now invincible. Right, apart from that mutant messiah, I've never seen anyone break its defense. This guy in white won't be an exception. I can't wait to see this mutant's shocked expression. Haha. As the audience eagerly discussed, and the X-Men, Brotherhood, and other mutants looked worried, Syd frowned, countering the other Sentinel's laser attacks while exerting force with his right hand. Bang, bang, bang. Instantly, the silver Sentinel began to twist, emitting the unpleasant sound of grinding metal. Syd clenched his right hand forcefully. Bang, bang, bang. In a scene that left countless people stunned, the silver Sentinel's limbs and head were torn off by the red glow. Amidst the flashing lights, the Sentinel, now resembling scrap metal, crashed heavily to the ground. It looked like it was made of wood, not steel, offering almost no resistance. The audience was dumbfounded, thinking they must have seen wrong. That was supposed to be a steel body, and it was just torn apart? How powerful is that red light? Impossible. Glancing at the destroyed Sentinel, Syd was both surprised and not entirely unexpected. His current chaos magic power was already close to Scarlet Witch's state in Avengers Endgame. At that time, Scarlet Witch could break Thanos' sword with chaos magic. Remember, Thanos' sword could shatter Captain America's vibranium shield without showing any signs of dullness, indicating its hardness. Although the Sentinel's steel state was tough, it was not up to the level of Thanos' sword. Despite the effort, he managed to tear apart the Sentinel. Frowning, Syd increased the output of chaos magic to counter the lasers from the remaining Sentinels. Glancing at a nearby wall, he raised his right hand, and the entire wall collapsed, being pulled towards him. He hurled it at the Sentinels. Boom! 3 Sentinels were buried under the rubble, momentarily incapacitated. Syd focused on the 2 still standing Sentinels. Red light enveloped them. Under the stunned gaze of countless viewers, Syd exerted force with his right hand. Their limbs and heads twisted, and like the previous Sentinel, they were rendered useless. Wasting no time, Syd withstood the laser and spike attacks from the Sentinels, dismantling them one by one. 1, 2. 10 minutes later, what appeared before everyone were the dismembered remains of the Sentinels. All gone. 10 terrifying Sentinels. All dealt with? Both the hundreds of thousands of viewers and the mutants were stunned. These were Sentinels, capable of giving mutants a headache. And now, this guy in white had dismantled 10 of them? Aside from the mutant messiah, another mutant could take down Sentinels? Where did this guy come from? Why are there so many powerful mutants everywhere? Is there really no hope for humanity? Another level 4 mutant? The viewers who had previously gloated over the white-clad mutants' presumed demise refused to believe what they saw. X-Men. Wow! Watching the live broadcast, Logan exclaimed. Professor X and Cyclops exchanged looks. They realized they had underestimated this newly emerged mutant. This level of combat ability didn't match their initial assessment. Definitely a level 4 mutant. Though not as powerful as the Omega-level Messiah, he was undoubtedly stronger and more promising than they had thought. End of chapter. Chapter 90. Brotherhood of Mutants. Another mutant with extraordinary potential. Magneto marveled, feeling genuinely pleased to see another powerful comrade emerge. This further proved that humans were an outdated species that needed to be eliminated. Only mutants were the future. With this thought, he grew curious about what the person under the white garb looked like. Was he an older man or, like Messiah, a very young individual? Luxury villa. Tony Stark wore a serious expression, pondering whether his Iron Man suit could defeat this guy. After thinking for a while, he felt disappointed to realize that, as of now, he probably couldn't beat him. He decided that once the anti-Messiah armor was created, he would prioritize building an armor specifically designed to counter this white-clad individual. Shield. Watching the live video, Fury's single black eye showed both fear and desire. Hydra leader Pierce grew increasingly interested, feeling more and more satisfied with this future tool. While various factions had different thoughts, after Syd had dealt with the Sentinels, he sensed a significant amount of light energy still remaining in his body and looked ahead. The 10 soldiers in the distance, seeing the Sentinels fail, immediately started to flee. They knew they were no match for the freak in the distance, and shooting would be futile, so they chose to retreat. The next second, red light spread across the ground. Bang, bang, bang. Bricks and dirt floated up. Then, they flew towards the 10 fleeing soldiers. Ah! The soldiers were buried under the bricks and dirt. Syd's hands glowed red, ready to fly away from there. But before he could, he noticed something flying overhead. The surroundings had quieted down, making the drones more noticeable. The hundreds of thousands of viewers watched in horror as the mysterious figure in white seemed to give them a cold glance. His hands then glowed red. With a whoosh, several energy blasts flew out. Boom, boom, boom. Drone debris fell from the sky. Syd's figure moved, and his pure white form quickly flew away. It was only after he had disappeared for a while that people dared to clean up the battlefield. As Syd flew, The various factions increased their attention on him, secretly plotting different schemes. Syd was aware of this but had no choice. With the Sentinels targeting him, he had to destroy those things. Even though greater danger might come later, that was a problem for the future. At this moment, Syd was feeling a strange sensation within him, frowning slightly. At some point, a faint whispering had reached his ears, as if trying to communicate with him. Syd shook his head, confirming it wasn't an auditory hallucination. His expression changed. Fortunately, the strange whispering disappeared after a short while. Despite this, Syd thought a lot in that brief moment and even came up with a plausible guess. The dark god of magic, Thon? His face looked slightly grim. He had long been wary of enhancing chaos magic, fearing it might attract the attention of the dark god. And now it seemed his fears had come true. Wanda's chaos magic had countless connections with Thon. It was said that shortly after Wanda was born, Thon had influenced her, giving her chaos magic. In other words, the source of chaos magic was actually this dark god, Thon. Of course, this referred to chaos magic without the probability manipulation that could alter reality. Thon had given Wanda chaos magic, hoping she would grow powerful enough to break his dimensional seal and possibly act as a vessel for his descent. However, as Wanda grew, she broke free from his control, rendering his expectations and investments futile. Another theory suggested that chaos magic was innate to Wanda, and Thon had marked her out of interest in chaos magic. Syd pondered, his face looking grim. Thon is far scarier than Dormammu. Opposite to Thon were the three Vishanti, the trinity of white magic. This gave an idea of Thon's power. So, he's targeting me now? He could only say one thing. Who can understand the frustration of being stalked by a creepy, perverted guy at just 16 years old? Looking for help, urgently. After pondering for a long time, Syd could only sigh. Apart from striving to increase his strength, he couldn't think of any other solution. He could only hope to grow strong enough to resist Thon's schemes before the dark god made his move. Thinking this, he felt a bit helpless, realizing chaos magic was indeed a big pitfall. He could clearly feel that the chaos magic he had mimicked was entirely his own, unrelated to Thon. But even so, it still caught Thon's attention? It seemed that, in Thon's eyes, he might be more attention-worthy and significant than the Scarlet Witch. Syd thought, feeling helpless. Half an hour later, he stopped in a small grove. Time passed quickly, and it was soon evening. Syd looked up at the distant sky. Seeing the sun set completely, his urgent desire for power led him to focus on the new panel. I wonder what the god of light, Baldur, is like. What will I gain from enhancing the unlock progress? Curious and expectant, he looked at the new ability panel. Name: Syd Castell. Age: 16, remaining lifespan: 199 days. Mutant ability: Mimicry, Energy Absorption. Current mimicry target: Baldur Odinson. Title: God of Light, Son of Odin. Unlock progress: 1%. Ability: Not unlocked. Energy points: 7,963. Seeing his remaining lifespan, Syd felt frustrated. Cancer seemed like an unshakable curse. He was puzzled. With a significant amount of light energy in his body, how could he not cure a mere cancer? Though it was a mix of several types of cancer, it still seemed too exaggerated. As he pondered, his face changed slightly. He vaguely remembered that cancer in the Marvel Universe was considered a cosmic-level disease, extremely difficult to cure. Did I remember wrong? Syd's mouth twitched, feeling it was a bit unscientific. After a while, he shook his head, deciding not to dwell on it. As long as he continued to enhance his abilities, he would cure cancer one day. His gaze shifted to other parts of the panel. Aside from the 1% unlock progress, nothing else stood out. He needed to increase the unlock progress to see any special abilities. Glancing at the remaining energy points, he allocated 1,200 points to the unlock progress. The 1% progress blurred. Unlock progress: 11%. Meanwhile, a surprising notification appeared. Ability: Divine Physique, unlocked. Ability: Divine Physique, 0 out of 100, level 1. In an instant, Syd felt his body enveloped in a warm current, different from before. The changes were more significant this time. Bone density increased, and his blood gradually took on a golden hue, radiating light. Muscles and skin tightened, minor flaws disappeared, and his whole body evolved towards perfection. However, perhaps because divine physique was only at level 1, the transformation wasn't complete, only progressing slightly. Even so, Syd felt his body was different now. His spirit was vigorous, as if he could stay up all night. His strength had increased significantly, and even some muscle had begun to form. He was evolving from a fragile human body towards a divine physique. What's happening? Venom was baffled, forced out of Syd's body. Perhaps due to some form of corrosion, Venom's black body now glowed faintly with gold, looking somewhat comical. Venom swore he had never encountered someone who could turn him into this bizarre state. At this moment, he was questioning his existence. Syd is probably a monster, as humans say, right? He was both shocked by Syd's current transformation and filled with confusion, not understanding what strange changes were happening to him. My body. Syd raised his right hand, pinching his left arm. He could feel his body's resilience and density had significantly increased. In simpler terms, his defense had improved a lot. Divine physique. Syd murmured. After testing, he found that although it was only at level 1, his skin's defense was already comparable to that of a bull, and his strength was nearing that level too. To put it simply, he was becoming a human-shaped beast. Divine physique filled many of his shortcomings. Previously, a single bullet could kill him if he wasn't careful, emphasizing his fragile body. But now, as divine physique gradually increased, he could compensate for this fragility, becoming a perfect six-sided warrior? Or mage. Just 11% unlocked, and I already have divine physique. I wonder what else will come. Syd looked forward to the possibilities. Most importantly, divine power would surely awaken eventually. Having divine power made a huge difference. I wonder how much progress is needed, Syd thought expectantly. Glancing at the remaining energy points, he eagerly allocated them all. Unlock progress. 34%. Nothing happened for a while. Syd felt a bit disappointed but had no choice but to wait until the next day. Afterward, he continued fleeing while trying to enhance divine physique. He found that by running a newly emerged force within his body, possibly his blood, divine physique's experience would slowly increase. Divine physique experience +1. Divine physique experience +1. While hiding, Syd noticed a square broadcasting news about Iron Man, Tony Stark. Based on the information, he deduced that the current events were post-Iron Man 2. Shaking his head, he focused on enhancing divine physique. Divine physique experience +1. Ability. Divine physique, 235/500, level 2. The next evening, while Syd was practicing divine physique and sensing the changes in his body, a bright light beam descended from the distant sky in the dark night. It seemed something had arrived on Earth. Looking up at the distant scene, Syd was startled and murmured, "Thor?" End of chapter.